I'm not an advocate for porn, but the one thing porn did do is show the average man what a really beautiful woman looks like naked. A woman can put her ass on Instagram and make more money than the man that built the road to get to where we're going. I think that's a big issue with society, and I think that's men's fault. Just be the best man you can be. Because if you can become that man, you now have the opportunity to be able to act like a gentleman and not have to do things to manipulate other people. You're just that guy.
I think that there is something very wrong with masculinity. I think that there is what I'll call societal decay. I think something is going wrong. One, I'd love to know if you agree, and if you do, what precisely do you think is the problem with modern masculinity?
I think there's a lot of things involved. I think social media is a big part of it.
What is it about social media?
So I think in a lot of ways, if you were looking to any man that wants to have a good life, he needs to be appreciated. And so, for example, I have a lot of guys that work for me in a steel company. Well, one thing that I'm constantly challenged with is that guy, even though he's great at what he does, even though he's building America, even though he's doing things that makes the world go round, nobody appreciates him for it, because when he goes on Facebook or Instagram, he sees a 21-year-old that caught a crypto pump or did Amazon drop shipping driving a Lambo in Dubai. And I think that's a really big problem for men.
What causes that problem, though? That feels more to me like it is a consequence of something that we need to establish is, what should a man derive his worth from?
Money, women, cars. That's not going to do it for you ever, ever, ever. It's going to be you meeting the expectation you have for yourself as a man. So you envision this man that you're going to become. And I think most people do that from an early age. They see something they want, an avatar, something they want to do, and they want to go become that person. And I believe the formula for happiness and fulfillment is the gap between your expectation of who you become and your reality. And so a lot of guys are not meeting that expectation for themselves. And I think it's harder and harder to do that, particularly in a world where we've gone off the gold standard. A man can't just have a job and support a family and be the man of the house anymore. And I think that's one of the biggest issues with families now.
I want to make sure that we're careful to piece together exactly the argument here. So when I say that we have societal decay and it's tied to masculinity, are we in agreement with that?
100%.
Okay. So then as we begin to tease apart, what does that mean? The first thing you went to was they're not being appreciated. Social media sort of blasts that out. You see all these images, not of hardworking, blue collar, right. I'm putting that word in your mouth, but sort of hands in the dirt, doing something hard. That's no longer being celebrated. Instead, it's the crypto pump, whatever.
That, and I say this a lot, is that a woman can put her ass on Instagram and make more money than the man that built the road to get to where we're going. I think that's a big issue with society. And I think that's men's fault. I think this whole thing is actually the fault of weak men.
Okay, so why is putting your ass on Instagram a problem?
Because in a lot of ways, how is a man ever going to be able to be with a woman that is showing herself all over the internet and still garner her respect if he doesn't shut it down?
Okay, let's really answer that question. So garnering her respect does not feel like there would be any problem if your girl is, I'm assuming we're talking OnlyFans here. So your girl has an OnlyFans account. She's putting her ass out there. She has been given a gift from God, or she's working on it, and she's in incredible shape, and men are responding.
And in many cases, she's going to make more money than the average guy.
Which is fine. What I don't understand is, well, not true.
Yeah, I would argue that it's not fine for their dynamic, probably.
Okay, so the base assumption that I hear you say is that their dynamic will not be successful, and we'll need to define success in a second, but their dynamic will not be successful. She won't be able to respect him. Is that where you're going? Because she earns more money. She's in
I think in most cases when the woman makes more than the man, then there's a bit of an issue.
Okay.
And you see it quite a bit. I don't think that's a crazy statement.
It's interesting. I don't think it's a crazy statement, but there's a follow-on statement, which is, but what's the alternative? Because I live by a motto: never ask someone to slow down so that you can lead.
I agree. I agree with that completely. And here's another thing. I don't judge those women on OnlyFans. I think in the past I might have put a light out there that I do. Actually, I don't. Because in my opinion, there's not enough strong men out there that could lead a woman for all of the women that probably make money on OnlyFans to find somebody they can look up to. I do think that's very important in a relationship dynamic, that the woman does look up to the man in some way. I do think that's very important. I think that's very primal as well.
Do you think it's important that men look up to the women in some way?
I think it's
woman?
important that they love and respect them. You know,
But not, there's a clear distinction for you between
there's a
love and
clear
respect
distinction
and
who
looking
the
up.
leader is. Respect equals love, right?
I'll take that in that you believe that.
I do believe that.
Okay.
I'd love for you to challenge it.
I
Like,
don't
so you
know
don't
yet. I
think
haven't
if your
thought about it.
woman doesn't respect you, she doesn't love you?
I don't think I love, certainly I don't love everyone romantically that I respect.
No, of course not. That's not what I'm saying. Like, respect equals love in the sense that if a woman can't respect you, she's probably not going to love you. And as she starts,
Romantically, just so I can be clear?
and in many situations when a woman goes to leave, if she has lost respect for that man in some way, I do believe that.
Yeah, respect I would say is necessary but not sufficient for a long-term pair bond. Will you give me that?
I'll give you anything.
Okay,
Bro.
so
but what
that
do
I
you think
my
is
sense.
though? What do you think is though?
What do I think is the whole cocktail?
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think is the cohesion that keeps a man and a woman together?
So, and this is, we're now really jumping to right where I think my disconnect is with what word? Red pill is what people are going to apply to you.
I know.
You seem to
and I would
sidestep
definitely
that.
like
Yeah.
I'd
So
definitely like to
what
dodge
word
that.
would you put on your stance if you had to put it under an umbrella?
I believe the more strong men we build in this world, the better for men, and as a result, the better for women.
Okay, so we'll call that, instead of calling it red
It's-
pill, we'll just say
dude,
it's
it's like
the
self-help.
JWaller philosophy.
Or whatever. Yeah. Call it whatever you want. It's just men have to understand that life is going to be difficult.
Yep.
They're going to have to fight their ass off to get in a position to be able to find a partner that looks up to them, respects them, they can lead a family and feel fulfillment in being the leader of that family. I think that's very natural for every man to want to be the leader of the household.
Yes. Okay. This is a very complicated issue. Let's take things one at a time. So my bundle of things that I think make for a long-term relationship, and this is the one thing where I'll say, as we distill these down, I think this is the place where we're going to see where we don't agree.
Cool. Let's do it.
So I think that nature, from an evolutionary standpoint, has ensured that you are half of a whole, and that for you to manifest in your life all of the success emotionally and in the tangible world of staying safe, being fed, all of that, procreating, that you need to come together as a unit. And so now the question becomes, what is the ideal unit and what is going to make sure that that unit stays safe and strong? So when I look at that, there is a neurological component to pair bonding. So Dr. Amen has done research on this. Fascinating guy. If people don't know who he is, look him up. He's a neuroscientist that's done more brain scanning, I think, than anybody else. So he's been doing this for 20 plus years.
Like oxytocin and stuff like
so
that. Okay, cool.
vasopressin, oxytocin.
Yep.
And he was saying, I won't let someone date my daughter until I scan their brain and I see how receptive they are to those two compounds, because they're the compounds that predict pair bonding. And I thought, ooh, that's really interesting. And I think is a key reason why, so I've been married for 21 years, and why I think our marriage has been so successful.
Incredible.
And she got with me when I was broke. It's hilarious that people accuse my wife of being a
Of course
gold
they
digger.
do, bro. People on the
Absolutely
internet,
hilarious.
bro.
So
Yeah.
but she finds it funny, and I find it hilarious. So part of our reason, I think I'm a super responder. So for me, I really get something out of pair bonding. So when my wife and I got together, and by the way, she's the only woman I ever told I loved. Not the only woman I've slept with, but the only woman I ever told I loved. So for me, it was like one shot, one kill. I knew exactly what I was looking for. When I found it, that was it, lock it up. So, and then the rest was, okay, do I know how to navigate this so that it gives me enough to be worth the sacrifice? But again, I'm coming at this from an evolutionary perspective of what is most likely to allow us to come together, to be safe in an ancestral environment where we're getting attacked left, right, and center, where our kids are hyper likely to die, where this is all really a dangerous endeavor. And so coming together and saying, are we making each other better? Am I a better version of myself with her than I would be without her? Is she a better version of herself with me than without me? And does she make me her number one? And this is where I think
that's a big one.
Yeah, where we might see a schism between how we look at this. So I would never give up sex with other women if I didn't become my wife's number one and feel like the coolest person in the world has picked me to be like, yo, if you ever slip, I've got you. You ever need to be pushed, I've got you. You never ever need help, a laugh, whatever. Somebody to see you, celebrate you, cheer you on, whatever. Like, I got you. That is the only thing that I have ever found that makes the other sacrifices, which is not just sex, but that's a big one, especially for guys, has made that worth it.
Can I ask you a question on the I got you thing?
Please.
The support, the cheering you on, that's awesome stuff, right? What about when you're down? Do you call your wife or do you call your guy friends?
My wife, 100%.
Yeah. Do you feel like you have a brotherhood where you could call people outside of your wife?
Yes, but I understand the position.
It's
you're
not
in.
a diss
It's
either.
very different.
It's a genuine question.
Whatever is true is true. I have
Right.
no beef whatsoever.
Yeah.
No, I would say that is outside. I have had that.
Yep.
So my previous business was with two other guys, and it was always very clear to me that the brotherhood was far more important than the money and all that.
Right.
So I know what it is and I love it. But that to me is a very important part of what I think is broken. I think that men are not being held to a exacting standard. I think that's a big part of the problem.
Can you expand on exacting standard?
I can, but I don't want to deviate too much from you. So that's sort of my that's my rough nest of things where a relationship can be worth all the sacrifices you will make for it and turn you into something better than you would be on your own. But the price it demands is that you be the other person's number one and you make them your number one. What is your basket of goods that you think make that relationship worthwhile or not?
Well, actually, everything you just said, I'm completely in line with. Now, I wouldn't take my problems, let's say, to my wife, because I believe there's a really important part of the male and female dynamic where you get to be the hero. You get to be the one saving the day. You get to be the one solving all the problems, especially in a world full of men that are very feminized. Not to say that you are, but I believe that men are more feminized now than they've ever been. And in the counter opposite direction with the female, like let's say feminism, women are going in the direction of more masculinity. Men are being more feminine and women are like, where are the men? And it's been my experience for women I've either dated or seen or even at home. Hey, listen, I really like the fact that you take the lead, you take the masculine role and allow me to be feminine. In fact, I would even go as far as to say is that the smartest, strongest young women today are the ones that actually are okay with hearing the noise from the world and choose to be feminine and like and enjoy it. Maybe want to become a mother, which is something that's growing more and more unpopular or getting pushed back against an unrealistic time frame that they have. So I do like the idea of being the hero and not bringing problems home or to someone that would have to worry because I'm supposed to be the one solving those problems. This said, as a father or as somebody that's putting information on the internet, all I want to do is a few things. I want to educate people on, or my children, let's just say my children, on how the world works, give them the tools it takes to navigate through that world and put themselves in a position where they have choice. Outside of that, I don't want anything for anyone else but choice. And that's from, guests that you've had on, let's say Destiny, you had Destiny on, right? I got no issue with that guy. If that guy's happy and he's truly at peace with himself, even if he hated me, bro, I got nothing but love for him because all I want to see people have in their life is choice and happiness. And only you can decide that. So, I think there's a way to make that happen. You obviously think there's a way to make that happen. Destiny thinks there's a way to make that happen. I'm almost certain that those three ways are all not completely different, but different in some regards. But I don't think that's what solves for correct. I think what solves correct is if you're happy and you're fulfilled in that relationship. And that's it.
Do you think that there is anything preordained about what's going to make people happy and fulfilled?
Yeah, I think appreciation for a man is one thing. I think men want to be appreciated. I really do. I think it's their job to go earn that appreciation. And I think women want to feel protected and loved and cared for fully. And they want to know that they have a position with that man where he is going to take care of them forever, or he is going to put all of his efforts into taking care, and he gets fulfillment from it. I get a lot of fulfillment from taking care of my family. I love it. My little girls are spoiled for anything they want. And that
I have heard you say you would not simp for your daughters, though.
I won't. Now, I'm glad you said that. So when they become 14, if they hear the wrong tweet or they want to start coming at me with the heat, I'll quickly remind them who pays the fucking bills. I'm not gonna simp for them. It's just not that time yet. Right now, I want to love them. I want to know they have a father at home. I want them. They see me a lot. I was just telling you before the show. I imagine that I spend more hours with my kids than the average man. Because I'll come home for a week at a time, 2 weeks at a time, and stay with them all day. I see them quite a bit. I very much enjoy it. And when the time comes, the teenage years, if they want to get fresh with me, they will quickly find out that Dad's not going to play. That's it. No, in fact, I kind of look forward to kind of setting that frame with them. I think it's going to be important.
Okay, I want to talk about that. So even your energy changes when you talk about that. Like you imagine them 14 coming with the heat.
Yeah.
Your energy changed. So that moment, I think, is a very important moment. I think it's also very misunderstood and can create problems for sure in a marriage. Could potentially create problems with
the kids,
whatever. So why is that?
I'm sorry, which thing?
The change in energy. So I'll give you an example. Cool. My path was going from weak to strong, and I got into business and I was weak. And through the crucible of a brotherhood and the free market, I had to get hard. Now, I spent a lot of years in a very intense, I'll be generous, a very intense environment. And it was exactly what I needed. And it hardened me and made me far more capable than I ever was before. And it was incredible, and I would never take it back.
Right.
But as soon as I then branched out and started a company on my own, I was like, okay, I'm not doing that, because it breaks almost everyone that it touches. And I used to think about it like the inner city. And the inner city breaks the vast majority of people that it touches, but you get a few people that have to get so tough to overcome that they overshoot and they do just unbelievably amazing things.
Right.
But the vast majority of people get destroyed by it.
I feel that way about construction.
I can imagine.
I really do. Yeah.
So getting tough, very important. I'm sure we will explore that more. However, in the tougher I got, the harder it was for my wife. And the only way she knew how to articulate the problem was, I want my husband back. And that was very disorienting for me, because I was proud of who I'd become. But now I ultimately figure out what she was trying to communicate, and I'll explain it in a second. But that was very weird. The more proud I became of myself, the harder time she had in our marriage. And I was like, well, that's weird. And so she just kept saying, I want my husband back. I want my husband back. I want my husband back. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I am your husband. This is me. So are you saying you want something other than who I have become? So anyway, I finally realized what she's looking for is for me to broadcast and receive love. Meaning I can, to use your language, I can hold a frame, but I don't have to shift into an aggressive mode. Now, I do, and it feels good, and I love it. But ultimately, communication isn't what you intend, it's what's heard. And so...
Well, and also is how you make people feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how do you navigate that moment where you go from... Because the
Yeah, maybe I gave you the wrong impression. I think when I talk about my girls, I get a little fired up. It means something to me. Please. So that's...
I think this thing is... The transition of energy is exactly what makes... you uniquely interesting, right? You're part of for people that don't know, you're part of the Andrew Tate small group of people, but you have a very different vibe.
Yeah.
But if you think of that sort of energy as a spectrum, and you've got Andrew Tate, at least publicly, is only ever on aggression, in your face. I want to be as sensational and inflammatory as humanly possible. Right. And guilty or innocent, like he creates a frame that is not surprising at all, that he brings a lot of animosity in his direction.
Yeah.
You are able to move between, there are times where I'm going to be intense, and there are times where I'm going to be jovial and sweet and a gentleman. You've got a whole thing, I'm sure we'll talk about it, about what being a gentleman means and all that. But that moment of shifting your energy, I want to better understand what that means. Why, like, when you think about your daughters coming to you at 14, do you really want to bring the smoke, or is it like you want to
be smoke at all? I
them?
think I might have shown you energy from passion. Anytime I get passion, if you'd asked me a business question, and I'd have been talking about my guys, I would have said the same thing. But I wouldn't handle the situation any different with we're not much different with my daughter than I would an employee. I'd move any table out of the way. I'd sit with her or him, knee to knee, and say, hey, listen, I see this, this, and this, and here's where I think that this is going to either hurt you or hinder your situation. Here's why. I love you with all my heart. I'm not a yeller. I don't yell at my people. I certainly won't yell at my children, would never yell at a woman. So what I'm saying is that, yes, I'll get fired up on the subject, but if it came down to me and you talking about something that was really, really critical, or me and my daughter, or me and an employee, or me and Andrew, I would be very much just present in that moment with them, because I feel like if you start yelling at someone, they can no longer hear you. And so one thing I like to do is like just sit there knee to knee and be in their space and just be present in the moment and just tell them how I'm feeling. I won't get much higher than this. In fact, I'll probably be a little lower than this. I don't think people can hear you when you yell at them or when you get overly aggressive. So I might have made that mistake earlier in my 20s, but generally now I'm not raising my voice. No, not at all.
What's the role of aggression? I ask that in the context of, I really want to know, what is young men listening to this? They need a target to aim at. They need to know what the ideal man looks like. Does aggression play a role in that?
Only when it needs to. I believe the definition of a man is someone that can slit a throat and hold a baby in the same day. I really do. I think that you have to have the entire spectrum in all areas. And I only find it necessary to be aggressive when you're protecting. Other than that, I think that you can love people through things and have conversations. I've fired people that I told them I love them, but they got to go, because I'd already set them down and said, hey, look, man, I brought you here. I believe in you. I really want you to make me right, but you're doing this, this, and this, and you can't do this on job site. Maybe it's substance, or maybe it's something that's a safety issue. So please prove me right, man, because I believe in you. Pull them in a month later. Hey, man, I love you, but this isn't going to work. We all work for this company, and I have to protect the other families. You have to go. Hug them, let them go. That's it. And so I don't see a particular need to get overly aggressive with anyone in any situation, even a physical altercation. I'm not a yeller. I'll just throw the first jab cross, and I don't even want to, but there are times for aggression, but this outward projection of aggression, I'm never going to be good at. I'm never going to be good at being Andrew Tate, ever. We align on very, very many things, and we have a lot of the same beliefs, and he is absolutely wonderful in person, and you'd be shocked. But I'll never be able to be him the way he is online, in any way. And I could not even attempt to try, it's just not in me. He has something that I don't in that way. Like as far as being an orator or being a person that talks in certain ways, I'll never be able to do that, and don't wish to, because I think that my place in our group and what we're trying to accomplish together, which is to help young men all over the world, there's a place for me in that. And it's not being Andrew. It's being Justin, and that's all I can be anyway, so it doesn't matter.
You're out there making a million decisions every single day, and each pointless choice you have to make, like what color socks to wear or what jacket to put on, is just another distraction from the game-changing decisions that you should be focusing on. Save the brain power and the hassle of choosing what shoes you wear with Vessi. Vessi's shoes are made with a patented knit material that is both waterproof and breathable, keeping your feet cool in the summer and warm in the winter, and dry no matter what. Check out all of Vessi's styles at vessi.com/impact and use code IMPACT for 15% off your order. Simplify your life with Vessi. So what is the ideal that you want to see young men, or old men for that matter, strive towards?
I want young men to take accountability. I want them to understand the world, look at what it will take to create the competencies to give them choice. It's no different from before. I want young men to have choice. I say, if I were to have a son and he were to be gay, I would be completely cool with that. My concern is like, okay, if this is how you feel, that's fine. I love you with all my heart. Need conversation, right? However, you're going to deal with this, this, and this. Let me show you how I think you can best handle it, and then put yourself in a position to have choice so you can live your life on your own terms. And that's all I want for any young man. Straight, gay, liberal, Republican, anything. Like, I love people, truly. I have it in me. It's going to come off of me. I can't help it. In fact, I would even go as far to say is like my first year and a half online, I was just put in these positions where I couldn't show a side of me that was actually in there. It's always these arguing.
What side?
The part that really loves people, the part that's not really judging anybody, the part that wants to understand and help, that part. I don't really have much hate or aggression in my heart, really. I only fight when I have to. I only defend and get aggressive when it's somebody else. And for the most part, people's words don't hurt me. I had a clip that went viral. It wasn't even my clip. It was a clip that went viral on a dating show, 25 million. And I was just getting hate because it was a Christian lady. And somebody asked me about it on one of my podcasts, and they gave me a layup to shit on her. And I just refused to do it because I like a lot of things that lady says. And I think if I were to meet that woman outside of that context, we would get along just fine. And for that reason, I just don't see the need to hate on anybody. I want to create a situation in my life and on my platforms where I'm enough for myself, and anybody that wants to follow me can. Anybody that doesn't, that's okay. And I want people to live their life that way because I feel like there's a big push in the world to either guilt or shame men into doing things that society wants. And I don't think that's the right way to go at all.
What does
Choice.
society want?
I believe society wants men to be weak. I think they want to be fat. I think they want to be submissive to their wives and the community in the way that maybe they don't want to go. And I think that's why Andrew is so popular. I think there's a world full of, there's no superheroes anymore, man. I was sitting at Andrew's house the other day, and this kid sent me a poster of me and Andrew on the wall. And I flipped over and I showed Andrew, I said, "You know, this used to be Rambo?" And he goes, "I know." It's fucking crazy. So I believe that young men are disenfranchised with the direction that society is trying to take them, particularly in the West. And I think that they're fighting against it, and maybe even maybe the red pill space is overcorrecting. I'm not crazy about being called a red pillar. I'm really not, bro.
No, I get it.
I'm really fucking not. But I do believe that there's times where the red pill space, when the world's dragging people in this direction, and the red pill's taking them to an extreme, hopefully, my genuine hope is that they fall in the middle, and they can be a gentleman, or they can be a father, and they don't hate women. I certainly don't hate women at all. And that's one thing that I think the red pill space will probably like try to promote. Maybe there's a little peacocking. There's things that are wrong in the space, but I think on the average, all they're doing is counteracting what society is making them, and they're hopefully falling in the middle if they have a brain. You know what I mean? Like you can't, I heard Destiny say on y'all show that if you were to measure most red pill content followers' brains, that it would be small. I don't think that's true. I just think those young men want to answer, and they need somebody strong to look up to. And when they look up now, their superheroes are homosexual or feminine or whatever, and they don't buy it. And
why doesn't that work, or why is that bad?
For young men?
Yep.
I think that they're disenfranchised with being suppressed as males, in that they want to grow up and they want to do these great things and they want to be strong and they want to be capable. And the same thing with Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson created the same movement in a much different way. And I just think that young men are tired of being asked to not be men.
Okay. So,
and that's hard to argue with, man.
I can give you the argument for it.
Please.
It is not one that I necessarily agree with. But so before I do that, what I really want to understand, every time somebody puts forth like, this is how I think things should be or whatever, they put forth a hypothesis. So your hypothesis is that men are, they're not given a vision of what they could be. So I think, and that they have a true nature is what I think.
They have a true nature, and it's getting suppressed. They want to be something else.
Okay. So men have a nature. What is that nature?
That nature is to conquer, to get build up as much as they can, become the greatest man they can.
Build up what?
Everything in their life. They want to, I think truly men want to be in abundance of resources. They want to have abundance of choice with women. They want to have children. They want to have people that look up to them. They want to feel appreciated, all of these things. And I think those things are by and largely getting suppressed.
Okay.
Even in the school system.
In what way does the school system suppress that?
I don't feel like curriculums are made for little boys. I think they're made for mostly little. I think girls do better in school than boys. And I think that boys don't want to sit still. I think they want to go outside. I think they want to explore. I think they want to build things. And so when a little boy sits in a classroom and he's told to be quiet or to sit still for hours on end, he's not going to be successful. Even me, myself, I failed 6th grade. I was labeled a 504 student. I got put on Ritalin. I didn't read all that well. And so that made me feel like I was failing from the jump. Well, joke's on them. Like, I substantially make more money than all of my teachers put together every year. It's just, I think that the world, particularly little boys, have had enough of being suppressed and let down. And so that's why guys like Peterson and Tate do so well.
Okay, very interesting. I want to really
Please
put a fine
disagree with
point.
me.
Do I disagree with anything that you've said? Not yet. We may disagree in the particulars, but I do want to make sure that we answer the question. One thing I disagree with, I don't think there is a problem at all if the superhero that's presented to kids is gay. That doesn't matter to me in the slightest.
I think that people are tired of getting things pushed in their face. I don't personally care either.
This is why I think there's something that marries these two ideas of the Little Mermaid being black, race swapped, and being given gay superheroes. I'm going to articulate what it feels like from this side of the table, but let me know where I go wrong. So,
because I love both groups. Got nothing against any ethnic group or homosexual people. In fact, I have a super good reason why I like gay guys, but go ahead.
Give it to me.
Bro, imagine this. You're in a room. There's 5 guys in the room. One of those guys is gay. And there's one girl that's pretty and everybody wants a girl. He's going to be the best dressed, sharpest. He's probably going to be in the best shape, and he's going to take one with him. So it's me against 3 other bums to try to get. I love a gay guy. Reason number 2 I love a gay guy is that if you get on his team, he is the best ally on the planet as a wingman. So I got nothing but love for him. Enjoy your month, homie. Yeah. And I've had a bunch of close friends that are gay, really good to me too. I had a banker that was my banker for 10 years at Chase Bank. Really helped me through some hard times, helped me move money, all kinds of things. And like, we would go eat lunch and dinner and he'd hit on me. I'm like, bro, shut up. And it was like this joke. I'm like, I'm going to kick your ass. He goes, oh, please. Like, it's just like, guys don't really care. And I don't think people care about race and gender, or excuse me, sexual preference as much as the world says. And I think that's the issue, is that it gets pushed in people's face anyway when nobody really cares anymore.
Okay, so the social engineering thing we'll set aside, at least on that part. Yep. But I do want to get a better understanding of, okay, you said society wants men weak. Why would they want to make them weak, effeminate? Do you think, is
so
this
they'll
like
comply.
Conspiracy land?
So they'll comply.
Okay.
You want to take over a country, right? Who are you going to attack? You're going to attack the fighting age males, or are you going to attack the women, the children, and the old people, and get them thinking that way, and then create pressures on the men and just let it blow up from the inside out? Don't you think that's what's happening to America right now?
No.
What do you think's happening?
So I have a very bad feeling that this is what happens when nobody's being chased by a lion. I think Jordan Peterson, so this is something I'm thinking through now. So everyone forgive me if 6 months from now I have a totally different take. I watched Jordan Peterson go on his dad arc, and I was really excited about it. It was amazing. And I think he helped a lot of people. I know a lot of people hate him. I think he did unimaginably good things for a lot of young men. And when he came back from his illness, he was like super religious. I did not understand the hard right turn. I was like, what is going on? And looking back on when he was the internet's dad, he was really ahead of his time. And he was saying things that people hadn't said before. And so you had guys coming out of the woodwork saying basically, thank you for holding me to a standard, which was what I was saying in the beginning. I think this is really a problem of nobody's being held to an exacting standard. And the reason they're not being held to an exacting standard is there is no immediate consequence to not being held to an exacting standard, because nobody's being chased by a lion. So you're even, you can't make ends meet. Like, people can survive in Chicago homeless. What? Like, you can survive a winter in Chicago because you get governmental support and all that. Now, that all of these things, when you isolate them, sound awesome. I would never want somebody who ends up being homeless not taken care of. And yet, as we get to the point where Thomas Jefferson had a quote, every generation must pay for freedom in blood. And we don't do that anymore. And so we've now hit, if Eric Weinstein is right, there was a 70-year window of prosperity. That was amazing, but it's become deranged because I don't think intentionally, when nobody has World War, famine, Great Depression, like none of that stuff is hammering people, that all of a sudden we have to, and now I'll bring it back to Jordan Peterson, you've got young people who their final stage of development is a messianic complex. So you want to really go matter in the world. Man, I really get that. But what happens when God is dead. It's not an effective way. It's not an effective organizing principle in society anymore because en masse, we just don't believe in it. It's folklore. It's a fairy tale. It's not anything real. Nietzsche called this back whenever he was alive. I forget what years. And that's really playing out now. So you have a world where things are easy. And so this is interesting. This is your idea of you want to give people choice. And I get the way you mean it. So I'm going to use the same word, but I don't want to pretend I don't understand what you're talking about. But I think choice is the problem. I think that there are so few things that people have to do to stay alive that all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm not in a battle here for the lives of our children. And so I don't have to be back to back with my wife where she also has a sword in her hand and I have a sword in mine. And look, I'm going to kill as many people as I can kill because that's my job. But hey, you better be ready if the shit hits the fan and you're the last line of defense. You better be swinging that sword. And so that's my vision of how men and women have worked historically. And yes, huge division of labor, all of that, we can go down that rabbit hole. For now, just that's how I think about it. They're back to back, bringing what they each bring to the table to ensure the survival into the next generation. So you have a world where you have everybody passing through the need to have their messianic moment where they can help save the world. But because there aren't those immediate impending dooms, we start latching on to things which are hugely important, but they don't have that kind of immediacy. And so now it becomes, oh God, you start going on like literal crusades, make whatever change you have to make, spend trillions of dollars, depopulate the earth for the climate. The climate is a problem. The climate must be addressed. But when it becomes your messianic moment, then I think the solutions become pathologized and are no longer in the realm. When you want to make sure that gay people are celebrated and venerated as well as anybody else, but that's your messianic moment, then now all of a sudden it pushes out so far that we're to the point where we're not even protecting kids. We're saying that, okay.
Same thing. Yeah.
So
people are having enough of this.
I'm not even worried about people are having enough. What I'm saying is it pathological or not? Because if it isn't pathological and it is real progress, then people need to reorient. And so
Agreed.
Every movement needs a North Star. I think there is only one right North Star. I think it is absolute and I think it should apply to everybody. And that is, does this action increase human flourishing and decrease human suffering at the widest possible scale? If yes, do it. If no, don't do it. Now you get into complexities about, okay, how do we weight future lives versus contemporary lives? Anyway, we will rapidly get way too far off. So this is what I think is the problem.
Yeah.
Everyone needs their Messiah moment. Like we need it. We need to matter. We need to feel like we have contributed meaningfully
That's what I meant
to
by
the world
appreciation.
in some way. 100%, which we'll get to that because I've got a whole thing about appreciation.
Yep.
The number of times I've tried to get my wife to understand, all you have to do, you can manipulate me to the ends of the earth. I will do anything you want. Just fucking appreciate me.
Just make me feel appreciated.
Yes. Anyway, we'll get to that.
But that ties into what you're talking about.
Brother, 100%. Yeah. So, but right now, the thing I think is a problem. I do not think there's a master plan. I think we've made things so good.
I think it's just fucked.
Yeah, we've made things so good that now all of a sudden things are breaking down because we have these evolutionary drives to fight, to matter, to be messiahs. I don't mean that literally, but that impulse to really save people, to really contribute, to really help. But there's no one to fight anymore. So anyway, it just, there's pathology on both sides. It's what I really want people to understand.
So what do you think? You think it's just because we're in this whole good times, strong men, weak times, that whole,
that is
we're in that cycle?
Yes, it's a very simple way. It's probably overly simplistic, but it certainly gets people in the right direction. But more important to me is, okay, then what do we do about it? So that's where I really want to understand, like, the ideal you've laid out of what you want men to strive towards, what young men should be doing. But as we actually then put that in a modern context, what does it look like? What is your North Star? Off camera, you and I were talking. In fact, you brought it up earlier, that if you're striving for money and things,
it won't work.
It won't work, but you should do it. And so how do you get people to understand that I have a lot of money and yet I'm still pursuing more money, and unabashedly so, but I understand what money is. And so how do you help as the more nuanced of the tribe,
I wouldn't
the
say
elder
so.
statesman
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the red pill
I
here.
wouldn't say that.
I would. So whether you're the most nuanced, totally different question. But as the more nuanced, how do we bring this into the real world? How do we give young men a map out of a world where I think they have too many choices because they're not truly under threat, and they're making the easy choice at every turn.
Right.
And in conjunction with things like chemical exposure, which I do think microplastics play a bigger role in all this, and I want to imagine.
Yeah, man.
In
I agree with
that
that.
sort of whole thing,
Yeah.
how do we help them find a path out?
Cool. So we have to start with the fact that it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. You have to accept that, right? From there are things that we're obviously constantly promoting that they avoid: drugs, porn, chasing women. As much attention as let's say me and Andrew and Tristan get for chasing women, I cannot tell you how much I disencourage young men to chase women. I often say, give up your 20s, becoming the best man you can possibly be. Women will see that. They'll jump in front of you. I don't believe in game. I've never taken a game course. I've never taught anybody how to pick up a girl. In fact, I would not even say I have very good game. I think I got really good signals, but that's all predecessed from the work I did to become the best man I can be.
Signals of what?
Signals. So, Instagram. Oh, he has a good lifestyle. He travels. Muscles. He's done well for himself. Other men respect him. I think those are good signals.
You would be a good mate.
That I would be a good mate. And I think that's very primal. If you look in the animal kingdom, there's many, many animals that do dances or create certain or have colors and all these other things. Why did Indians have feathers? So the women knew who could hunt and who couldn't, what tent to get in, right? I very non-apologetically feel that way. I do think that's very real, and I think it's very primal. Do I think it'll make you happy? I absolutely do not. What makes a young man happy, or what has always made me happy, is working on the man that I'm going to become. I often talk about this thing I have called the rocking chair test, where I have this relationship with the older version of myself, where he can no longer go out and live and work, and he's just sitting on a rocking chair, smoking a cigar, drinking coffee, and he's looking back. And I keep this thing in my phone, a folder, where I speak to him and I tell him, hey, I'm scared of this. I'm doing 4 mobile home parks right now. I'm in due diligence. Hey, I'm a little bit scared. What if they're lying to me on the plumbing? Or what if I have to do a MODAD system? And I'm constantly talking to him because my goal is to make the older version of me happy while I'm trying to become the man that I envision to be in my life. And to do that, you have to take care of things like fitness, money, style, understanding how to network, understanding how to create connection with another human. These are all the things that we're teaching people how to do. You're never going to go online and find an Andrew Tate course, how to text girls. You're never going to hear me talking about how to text girls like this, do this, or most importantly, how to manipulate girls. One thing that I cannot stand seeing is people teaching young men how to neg women. Oh, you're kind of okay. It's lame. Just be the best man you can be. Because if you can become that man, you now have the opportunity to be able to act like a gentleman and not have to do things to manipulate other people. You're just that guy. And I think that we're trying to build young men that are that guy, even if it's not a Tate status, even if it's not a Fresh or Myron status or a Destiny status. Maybe they're just a person that lives in a small town, has respect for people in the community, makes a couple $100,000 a year, which is a lot, right? And they live a full, fulfilled life where they can have all the things that they wanted, and they worked hard to get it, so they really appreciate it. I don't believe in giving people compliments on something they didn't work hard for, if it's just something natural, because it won't mean anything to you. And so I feel the same way for young men. If they have to work for it, they understand life's going to be hard. They go through the struggles, just like you went through the struggles in your business to build your businesses. It wouldn't be as sweet if you didn't have the pain. And so I think what we need to do is tell young men that it's going to be painful. It's going to hurt. You're going to get hit in the face. You're going to get broken. You might go bankrupt. But if you just keep fighting, you're going to be really proud of the man you become. And I don't think there's anything other than that a young man needs to know.
Okay, so what are the areas that you want to see that manifest in their life? So
their physical body,
yep,
I think is number one, even more than money, particularly when you're young and your body is developing. I think your physical body is a big thing. Being able to communicate with other people and not getting overly aggressive, I think that's really, really important. Understanding finances is a really, really big thing that I think most people are undereducated in particular in the schools. If they could just understand how money works, they could have a better relationship with it, not be scared of it, be able to look at it, be able to actually use it as a tool, because that's all money is, right? Is a tool, an opportunity for freedom. And then understanding female nature, I think, is very important. And there's a big divider for me between understanding female nature and learning game, because I in no way ever want to make a young man think he needs to learn how to get women. He needs to be that guy and absorb the attention. And then from there, he has the proper masculine frame to retain the woman and have her respect him. And that's it.
Okay, so what does absorb the attention mean?
Yeah, so if you're doing everything right, let's say you're doing fitness, money, style, you're obviously respected in your space or your industry, you're a person that garners respect. I believe that women see that and they're like, that's a good horse to bet on. And then you're going to get attention from women, and then you have abundance of choice of women. Notice I didn't say sleep with a bunch of women. A lot of people in the red pill space, they'll be like, oh, sleep with this many girls, blah, blah, blah. I do think that having sex with a woman changes the dynamic, and that young men should experience different dynamics with women after they slept with them. But I don't have the set number in my mind. I just would like to see them have that experience. I think that they'll need that in the future, of course.
Why?
Why? I do think that when you sleep with a young woman, that you're going to get a different response out of some women than others. Some women will never talk to you again. They'll be on a yacht tomorrow, say Miami, right? Some girls, that means something too. And I think a young man needs to see that, because ideally, if I were to help him make his decision, he would put much more of a time and energy investment in the young woman that wants to have a family and wants to not sleep with a bunch of people. I don't think that promiscuity for women is a good thing at all. I don't think it's good for them. And is it a double standard? Yeah, I do think it's a double standard. Is it fair? No, sir, I don't. I don't think it's fair.
Is it a double standard brought to you by evolution, or is it a double standard brought to you by current society?
I think it's by evolution. 100%. I think that.
So
I believe that men are wired to try to sleep with as many women as possible.
And if they do that, they will have more what?
Offspring.
Yes. So what's your North Star? Is it fulfillment?
It's choice. My North Star is always going to be
choice.
That's it.
Choice.
Look, who am I to tell?
Now
who am I to tell?
Good.
Who am I to tell a young man what to do with his life?
I can tell him nobody.
Exactly. So, hey, here's how the world works. Here's what it's going to take for you to put yourself in a position of choice. And then once you get the choice, I think you should be a good person. I think you should be kind to people. I think you should always tell the truth and be honest and be able to communicate with them.
Okay.
But I can't tell you whether to have 2 wives or 50 girlfriends or 1 wife or to live in a monastery.
Yes, but you give a lot of advice. And I think the reason you give advice is you know that some steps make sense and other steps don't. But if I have a hard time believing you actually optimize, that you actually want people to optimize for choice. So I'll ask a clarifying question and we'll know. So if somebody's life had more choices, but they ended up in screaming agony, would you still say that they were better off because they have more choices?
No.
Okay.
And that's a great point.
So our North Star isn't choices. You just think choices is a step along a road to something else. What is that something else?
I'm going back to choice, man.
Well, okay, so
because some people are going to be degenerate no matter what.
But you know that you don't want somebody to end up in a scenario where they have all the choices in the world, but they're in screaming pain.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So if choice led to pain in their life, you'd say, oh, it's actually better to reduce choice, right?
I would, but
Doesn't that mean your North Star then is...
No, I believe that if you're taking care of your situation, let's say you're in a bad place and you're creating pain for yourself, you should have the choice to change your atmosphere.
Love that.
I'm a very big believer in atmosphere. Like, let's say that I was...
But what do you get from changing your atmosphere?
You put yourself in a different place. Have you not gone from one place to another and felt completely different?
I have. So I want to be very clear so we don't argue about something stupid.
Yeah.
I agree that choice is incredibly valuable, and the way I feel about choice, exactly the way I feel about money, that you want as much choice as you can get,
right?
But it isn't the thing. So having choice will not make you feel good about yourself. So if you make wise choices,
of course,
then you may end up, no, I think this is really important.
Do
and
it.
This is where I think people end up optimizing for, let's take money. It's far easier people will get it when I say money. Like if you're optimizing your life for money, we both know fool's errand. Even if you get it, you're going to end up being like, oh, I didn't want this. So, or it did not give me the thing I thought it was going to give me. So my favorite story to tell people about money is, oh, the way that I got rich was selling a piece of my company. So you go from normal bank account to commas and zeros everywhere, literally in an instant. You refresh on your bank and boom, it's there. And it was wonderful. Now I had already learned my lesson about money, but the hilarious thing was when it hit and I had all the money suddenly, I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. I still have all the same insecurities that I had 90 seconds ago. So money is not going to change how you feel about yourself, but how you feel about yourself is everything. And so what the only thing that I think is inarguable, and I'm very open, look, I've been wrong before. I've been confident and wrong before. So it is very possible I am confident and wrong right now, but I don't think so. I think the only thing that is going to be universal is if you optimize to increase human flourishing. So every choice that you get, because choice is it's amoral. You could have a choice. I could kill that person and get away with it. Okay, that's an additional choice. I don't advise it because evolution has given us minds in a certain way. And unless you're a sociopath, I think it's really going to mess with you to kill somebody for no reason whatsoever, or to kill something and get what was there. Oh God. So I would say the only way to think about it is you're optimizing for human flourishing, and choice is one of the things that will help you be able to navigate those paths well. But you can have choice and make all of the wrong ones and end up in a position where, yes, you can now back out of it and thank God. So we're grateful that you have choice, but by just pursuing choice,
there's a
you did not end up at the right
in
choice.
all of these pillars on the way to choice, and that's discipline.
Okay.
It takes discipline to go to the gym.
Yep.
It takes discipline to get up and go to work again after you've been punched in the face. It takes discipline to show up. It might even take discipline in a meeting for you to hold your tongue, right? And so choice plus discipline is going to be ideal, but it's ultimately choice. And if you have the discipline to get yourself out of a bad position or to not make bad decisions, then that choice can never hurt you. Would you add something to choice and discipline? Is there a better North Star? Because I'm here to learn too. I don't know everything.
Yeah. So I would say that
I know I'm sitting in front of a smart guy, Tom.
Yeah.
So
I mean, spend a lot of time thinking about that. So I look, we both know that you have to run everything against real life. And so I have no interest in having philosophies that when deployed are useless. So the way that I see it is you have put your finger on something incredibly important. This is why I want to make sure we're not arguing about this is what my wife and I call arguing about the tea versus the real thing.
Yeah.
So the biggest fight my wife and I ever got into was over a cup of tea. And about 2 hours into a screaming match, I realized there's no way this is about the tea. There's just no way.
Right.
And so finally I was like, what are we really arguing about here? So you have laid out some things on the table, and I want to make sure you hear and that everybody listening hears. I think choice is a good thing. It's very powerful.
Right.
I want to make sure that people understand that there are going to be a few things in their life that will be incredibly important to have. Now, I would say without discipline, you will never have choice.
Exactly.
So discipline, hugely important, already more important than choice, because discipline is the foundational thing.
Of choice, of every pillar to get the choice.
It will give you many things, including choice. So you have discipline, which is necessary but not sufficient for choice. So discipline, we have choice. Choice is amazing. But those are both things that we leverage, in my opinion, to get to a neurochemical state. Now, it is very important to understand one thing about me, that I am a physicalist. I believe everything comes down to your brain. I don't think there's anything spiritual. I don't think you have a soul. I think if I drive a 3-foot tamping rod through your head, it will change you forever. True story. Look him up. His name is Phineas Gage. And it's just, that just is. And so even if this is all a simulation, which anybody that follows me knows, really might be, the simulation works in a certain way. And so there is still cause and effect within the simulation. So I believe that we are entirely tied to our biology, and that you have nothing without biology, which is why I was saying, I think I'm a hyper responder to oxytocin and vasopressin, which is why it's easy for me to have a 21-year marriage. Other people may struggle, and maybe they're just dopamine freaks, and so they have to fuck everything that moves because it's the only thing that gives them that dopamine rush. So it's like, know thyself. I'm not even passing judgment. I don't care. Just
I get it.
I'm aiming towards one thing, human flourishing. That's it. Now, I think that evolution has just made it true that human flourishing is, there are outliers, everything's a bell curve, but there's a big, like when we talk about the center, That center follows a recipe that I will say is fulfillment. And that recipe is very simple. Every word I'm going to say is non-negotiable. You must work hard to garner a set of skills that allow you to serve not only yourself, but other people in a way that you find exciting. And if you do that, and you are making progress towards getting better at helping people at something that you're excited about, and you're serving yourself as well as others, you will, even in moments of grief, you will have fulfillment. You won't always have happiness. That's super transient.
Yep.
And nobody is happy
Yep.
in the middle of grief. But you can be fulfilled in the middle of grief. And the reason that recipe to me is it is non-negotiable is because nature had to make sure that as it cobbled you together from a bunch of competing cells, that you would ultimately stay alive long enough to have kids that have kids. That's it. That's all nature is trying to do. And since nature only has two levers, pleasure and pain, it starts yanking the fuck out of those two levers to make sure that you do all the behaviors that you need to do in order to have kids that have kids. So
don't you feel like that's our basic desire to have the choice to be able to do the things that you just said?
I
Because
do.
I
have no
don't
beef with
intrinsically
choice.
find it to be different.
The only issue I have is I think if you optimize as choice is the end product, it will lead to suboptimal outcomes. It doesn't necessarily lead to fulfillment.
And do you think that the proper answer is to optimize yourself, like optimize your body and your mind? And
I think you're optimizing your biology. So for me, everything can work back from fulfillment. So you have algorithms running in your mind.
right.
And those algorithms make you value certain things. And one of them is for whatever reason. And I'm guessing there's just probably some relatively self-evident things around being strong or capable or whatever, healthy. Maybe it's that simple. That when you get in shape, and guys, I will say this for you for sure, as you get strong and look aesthetically pleasing, you will feel awesome about yourself. And if I lost everything tomorrow and my wife, let's say, left me, step one, get ridiculously jacked. I know that the biggest breakthrough in business for me was changing my physique.
Bro,
I'm much smaller now than I used to be.
I always say that. I completely agree with you.
100%.
Proceed.
So, but
Your
that's
mind's better, everything.
for sure. To me, that's all algorithm running. It just is. There's no way to escape it.
It also, I believe that we put energies off.
What does that mean?
So you know how like the body's like an electrical system. I'm sure you know this, right? Or do you disagree?
I don't disagree, but now you're treading on where.
Listen, this
I'll
is not
call
my
woo-woo.
This is not my subject, but I do believe that when you walk in a room and you're confident and you stand tall and you believe in yourself, that energy does come off of you.
Yes, I don't know that it matters. I totally agree that we send signals, and I totally agree the other person can
Right.
read those signals, whether
Right.
they're energetic or just the brain knowing how to read other
whatever
people.
it is, yeah.
Irrelevant.
Primer or whatever.
But
So
yeah.
do you think that choice falls second to optimizing?
I've never thought about where choice specifically ranks. All I know is you're going to make choices, so good to have them, in order to get to the point where you can optimize yourself. Now, for instance, if you were to strip away freedom, then you can't maneuver through your life to figure out the path that actually allows you the neurochemical state that I'm trying to help people get to, which is fulfillment. So it is a necessary but not sufficient piece of the puzzle.
I believe that most all of humans, and I mean like a high percentage, 90 something percentile, are good people. Good people, like naturally. I think things happen to them in life where they get desperate and they do things that would reclassify them as bad, but they were actually just desperate. That said, I believe that most people would love nothing more than to put themselves in a position, just like you said, all of our pillars are about the same till we get to the end. But I believe that most people are good people, so most people would choose to do fulfilling things. And I'll use me for an example. This is all very, very new to me. 2 years ago, nobody knew who I was. I was just putting metal buildings up all over America and trying to buy real estate. I had mud on my hands, driving forklifts. It was construction. But I finally got the business to a place after over a decade, 13 years, where I have a true management team and staff, all this other stuff. I could have done anything. This is by far the most fulfilling work I've ever done. And I don't think I'm particularly special for doing it. I think most people, if given the opportunity to give back and feel like they're helping other people on a large scale, would absolutely take that opportunity, regardless of whether it made their status go up or anything like that. I think they would do it. I really, really do. Most people don't have the discipline to work hard enough to put themselves in a position of choice to actually get that fulfillment done. I don't think we're far off. Outside the biochemistry stuff. About how to get to fulfillment.
Probably not. So my concern is, do I think people are good? No, I don't think people are default anything. I think people are default survival machines, and evolution has pleasure and pain and algorithms that it's honed over time that make us a very cooperative, loving species. And that is awesome. And I love people, and I think that they're amazing. But I think that Solzhenitsyn was right when he said the line between good and evil runs through the heart of every man. I think that is
I agree.
Facts.
I agree with that.
So we are capable of both good and evil. That's my true stance. Now, I think that people are also easily confused, myself included, by the way.
I'd like to add to what you just said. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but like,
we're here for you.
You're right. It's this divide between good and evil, right? And a young man that, let's say he goes on the internet and he sees a bunch of guys saying, work out, work your hardest, be honest, build a team of brothers, do everything that you're supposed to do in life. I think more often than not, he finds himself on the side of choice and he chooses to be good instead of evil. I do think by and largely, I don't even think it's close.
So they're not default good. They just
no, they're not default good.
Good choices.
But if they do these things that we're all trying to preach, you included. I've heard you say plenty of the things that I say. I don't think there's a whole lot of new information out there about how to live a good life. Mm-hmm. It's if they take the initiative and have the discipline to build these pillars in their life. If they all got to a position where they had choice, let's say you took 1,000 men that did all of those things that you did, that maybe I did, that maybe some of these other people had done, I think they would choose the side of doing good things more than they would do evil, just naturally. Because don't we run in packs? Don't we want to be a part of the group as humans?
Yes.
Right?
So I'm not sure this will be fruitful, but it'll be fun. So let's go down this road. Okay, so one, I'm going to say something that I think you'll agree with so hard you're going to get a leg cramp.
Okay, cool.
Which is that if you have somebody that just won't make change, their life is trash in every way possible, and you want to see them make change, you kidnap them. You take them to a deserted island and you stock that deserted island with people that they really respect that will make huge demands of them. And they either conform to that group and do the things to earn that group's respect, or they remain an outcast. They will conform to the group and they will suddenly do all the things you would need to do to earn those people's respect. Their life will turn around instantaneously.
Cramp installed.
Yep. So whenever somebody says, oh my God, I've got a 15-year-old and I just cannot reach them, what do I do? I'm like, I'll tell you what'll work. You're not going to do it. So that's just the brotherhood. It's going to work, and it's going to work 100% of the time. Now, the problem becomes that humans are very good at othering other people. And hey, evolution is just trying to keep you alive long enough to have kids that have kids. Now, if we want to get real ugly for a second, and hey, why not? This is what I think is true. I think for a very long time, what ended up happening, and this is why we are going to talk about polygyny at some point, and here is why I'm super tense about I think polygyny is a response to an economic situation where you end up getting men that are hyper successful. You have no middle class, and women really are better off going with the 0.1% of men or whatever, and being like the seventh wife. It really is better. It's a wiser strategy when you're trying to make sure that your kids survive.
I've argued the point. Proceed.
Yep. So I get that. Now the catch becomes that for a long time, what we would do when we had times of surplus men, as they call them, so you've got all these guys that can't get laid. No one's going to like to hear it said like that, but that's the truth.
Right.
And when young men can't get laid, they really become a problem.
Yep.
And so you would put them together into warring tribes, let's call them Vikings, and you set them about warring. And the whole point of war is to
war brides.
Kidnap women.
Yeah.
And look, it's ugly, it's nasty. And that's why I say, I don't know, like internally, their tribe would be like, oh my God, they're the most moral, just, incredible people. And then I'd be looking at them going, they have slaves. They just killed that woman's husband and took her back. That's horrendous. But their group would say they're amazing. So this is one where, again, I want to remind myself, everybody else can ignore me, but I'm going to remind myself, the line between good and evil runs through my heart. And if I am not constantly looking up at that North Star, what will accidentally become my North Star is everything good for me. And the problem is that if that doesn't reach a check somewhere, now you're going to have a problem.
Do you think those Vikings were bad people?
Oh my God. Thank you for asking me a question that I have not thought through. I think they did very bad things. I do not want future generations judging me. I only want people in my current moment judging me. Yes, I'm speaking to all the people tearing down the past right now. I don't think that's a wise or fair move. So I do not want to pass judgment from here, but I would not act like they act.
I don't think you had a choice.
Yeah, probably. That's what I'm saying. I don't want to judge them. Because back then,
you wouldn't have a choice. Yeah.
Totally get it. Which
Nature's
is why
metal.
Say that again. Because for people that don't know what you mean by that, I think that's a very important point.
Nature is metal. For sure. You follow that Instagram page?
I do.
Yeah, bro, it's badass. My
It's
boy.
gnarly. So gnarly.
Bro, but it's a reality check. I don't like those videos, but I'll watch that a video on that channel and be like, this is what the world is. And you can get mad or play ball, you know. And another thing that
what's the gnarliest Nature is Metal post you've seen?
Bro, I saw this one of these two dogs. They got caught on Visqueen on the side of like a pond, and there's a crocodile at the bottom, and they're just scrambling trying to get up, and he's just waiting. They didn't make it, bro.
Oh, that's
they slid down, and they're just fighting to not slide down. And whack, got him.
Yep. Yeah.
But just like the Vikings, that crocodile is in a position of survival. And I think the humans are ultimately trying to live their life at the highest levels of survival in all realms. And I think every man is trying to do that. I don't particularly think the Vikings were bad people. I think that their back was against the wall and they had no options. And so they did it by force.
Can I give you a slight variation on that theme?
Proceed.
Nature is metal. The only rule of nature, and we are animals, this is where if people are religious, they are not going to understand my take, but we are animals that crawled out of the primordial ooze and used intelligence as a way to become the most dominant predator the world has ever seen.
Right.
But ultimately, the only rule of nature is the strong will do as they will, and the weak will suffer as they must. And that's it.
Do you not think that's Darwinism?
You could put that word to it, sure. I just think that's it. Like it just,
right.
You're going to survive or you're going to die. Things are trying to eat you and you're trying to eat things. And if you're good enough to kill them, then you get to. And if they're good enough to kill you, then they get to.
Right. I say all the time, you know, like I love my country very much. I'm very patriotic. Like I love America, especially because I was born in the 80s, you know. I truly believe that America's a bully. But if America was not bullying, we would be getting bullied by Russia or China. And I think that if China could take us over today, they would do it. And I think even in 2023, that's still a real thing. Nature is still metal right now. And like back to I know you're going to bring up polygyny later. Non-popular take, but in a lot of ways, that's Darwinism too. Not fair. I'm not saying I like it. I'm not even saying I promote it. But in a lot of ways, it is. You yourself said that they could be the seventh wife, but probably would live a better life. I don't love that. I don't love that statement. I don't think it's wrong, though. So what do we do?
What would make it something that you would voluntarily opt out of?
If they could get rid of social media and create scenarios where the temptation was not in everybody's face, I think that would be a really good start. I don't have a direct answer on how to voluntarily opt out because I understand what's in me and I understand what's in most men. And
But that's not uncontrollable. So this is, I know
Yeah, I
this
think
is
it
the
not
thing
being
that-
in your face is a big deal.
Really? So,
Yeah.
JWaller, you have freakish amount of discipline. You know you could set it aside if you wanted to and be faithful. I'll just speak from my own experience. I have a very high sex drive. And I'm sure at times my wife feels that she suffers as a result. But that doesn't mean that I assess the situation and go, and look, I'm rich and I have a high sex drive. So I could go to my wife and say, hey, look, I couldn't now because she's too successful in her own right. But back in the day, hey, this is the way that it's going to be, right?
Yeah.
And she, I think it's very straightforward to say, would have been like, get the fuck out of here. But let's just pretend that she rolled with it. I could go and do that. And I didn't. And I've heard you say 1,000 times, hey, if guys don't want it, I'm not promoting this. If guys don't want to do it, like I totally get it. And you're not weak. You have been very emotionally generous. So all I'm trying to figure out, I don't pass a moral judgment on it.
Yeah, I get it.
I have a look at it from a societal lens where I'm like, look, you're making hay while the sun shines. You find yourself in a situation where you can do this. But when you're pushed on this, you always give what I think is the worst argument ever from JWaller. I think knowing your own philosophy, I could give a better answer for why you do it.
All right, then what is my philosophy, and then what do you think's better?
Okay, so your philosophy is the philosophy of choice. I have given myself all these options. I have these options. I really can give these women a better life. It is a very small price to pay for them to say, hey, you're going to be number 2 or number 3. And you're probably not going to go a lot deeper than that, I don't think. And so look, I'm going to make your life amazing and you're going to be way better off with me. And by the way, these are your words. This is not my life view.
Proceed,
but
bro. You
that-
can't hurt my feelings.
No, I'm not worried about hurting your feelings. I'm talking to the audience. I want to make sure they understand I'm representing your view.
Yeah.
That they can certainly be with another guy, but the odds of him cheating on them and just lying about it are very, very high.
Very high. Yep.
Whereas you are going to be upfront. You're going to tell them this is the way that it is. I really hope that you want to be a part of this because I would really love to share this with you. If you don't want to be a part of this, I totally understand. Yes?
Yes, but you are leaving one thing out, and I've actually left this out too.
Yep.
Most of these women are bi.
Okay.
And I am screening for that.
Yes.
So there is a level of Bonnie and Clyde accompanying, it's a companionship, like helping find other women, to be completely clear.
Okay, so can I say it in another way? You guys are sharing a sexual experience together. It's a shared thing.
Yep.
Love it the most. That I have no beef with.
Right.
But where I was going is that the argument that you always give publicly,
Sure.
which what you just said is maybe a different orientation that's better, but for me anyway, is that I can't control these urges. And so people always feel like this cognitive dissonance of here's this hyper-disciplined guy who's done all this shit and sheet metal and
And I should have, you know what, when I was asked about discipline on that other podcast, I was so, one thing I hate more than anything in the world is a judgmental Christian. I grew up in the South. I could not hear her because all I saw or all I could hear was her wagging her little Christian finger at me, knowing damn good and well she didn't get married until she was in her 30s, which means that more than likely she had sex before marriage as well. Like, we're both sinners. And I should have...
Why do you care? Why do you care if a Christian judges you? Usually
I grew up in it. I grew up in it.
So
I
do
grew
you
up
still
in the
feel lingering judgment
from Christians?
from yourself?
No. No, I feel completely free. That's why I'll come on a podcast and talk about it. Why I don't like hypocrites. The one thing in this world I hate the most is hypocrisy. And it's been my experience with Christians, particularly growing up in South Louisiana, that they'll tell you one thing and do another. And then if they want something done, they will pick the Bible verse that fits the situation and hit you upside the head with it. I despise it. I truly do. And I think a lot of Christians despise it. The Christians that just want to go to church and want to have their relationship with God and their faith, and they have other people judging them from this God complex that they have because they think they've read the scripture more than the next person, or they think they are better in some way than the next person. So they cast stones down and they use the Bible as a sword to do it. I can't stand it. Truly. The best Christians I know are Christian. I know they're Christian and they don't talk about it much. It just comes off of them. They have that Holy Spirit, that love in their heart, whatever that is that they have. And I really respect Christians that are that way. It's the ones that are judgmental and that want to make a scene about them being holier than thou, and they're on some kind of religious pedestal that you're not. Those people can get fucked. That said, I should have responded. I have a ton of sexual discipline. You could put any of my friend's girl butt naked in my bed for a week, and I can tell you I would not touch her. I also turn down quite a bit of married women on social media. It disgusts the shit out of me. Also, a lot of times Christians with their Jesus background on their Facebook timeline and then sliding in my DMs. I'm very aware of it. I have a hyper interesting view of hypergamy on my social media, just because.
Tell people that don't know what's hypergamy.
Hypergamy is when a woman is looking out into the world. This is my definition. I don't have Webster's memorized. When a woman is looking out into the world and looking for other partners that she could possibly be with, and putting out signals to see if she can, what they call monkey branch, over to that next partner. So they have a foot in the boat and a foot out in hopes that they can jump on the other boat. And
typically hypergamy is tied to the idea of over or up. So they're dating laterally.
It's either over or up, and most oftentimes it's up. And again, I think that social media wrecks families for this reason, because back in the 80s, let's say, you might see a beautiful woman, or you might see a really handsome man as a woman. You saw him one time in a parking lot. He might live in that town with you, and you might not see him for another 20 years. That's not in your face. When I bought that Lamborghini the other day, it went on my Facebook. Everybody's wife that is friends with me on Facebook saw that I bought a Lamborghini. Like, I'm not super excited about that. It's not even the reason I posted it. But hypergamy is generally happening when all these other options are out there, and that woman says, okay, well, that is a better mate choice for me from a primal perspective. And so they make that attempt to make that move. And you see it quite a bit, especially with social media.
It's interesting. So I look at, from a social media perspective, and again, tying this back into the whole thing that got me thinking about this is, so one, I do view it very differently. If you're talking about my wife, girlfriend, whatever status, we like to share this kind of sexual experience, no beef. Right. To be honest, I don't have a beef with any of it. People should live whatever life they want. What I worry about is that, just like I don't think the damage is being created by social media per se. I think that what ends up happening is people have no demands are being made of them. We don't have a sense of what is the ideal. We have flipped the idea of, oh, if you have an ideal, your ideal would be that, I think, that women should have a low body count, to use the common phrase now.
They should have a low body count.
Okay. So,
and I disagree with you on social media.
You think that social media creates
I think social media wrecks it. I'll tell you why. I'm not objectifying women, but let's say everybody knows a scale of 1 to 10, right? A man, attractiveness. A man will sleep with a substantially less attractive woman just to do it. And now that woman thinks that she deserves that level of man. So the guy that's really in that girl's league, she's saying, oh, I slept with that guy. And after the relationship happens, she settles, and then she's looking around still for other men. I think that if anybody gets married, you get off social media or have one together. Truly.
Interesting.
I do.
That strikes me as an
insecure, right?
Not insecure. Yeah, untrusting. It feels like you feel that people are trapped by their nature and that they cannot be trusted with their impulses.
Not so much. I don't think you should put your partner in that position.
What
I
position?
I trust the locks on my F-150. I don't put it in a bad neighborhood. So why put her in that position of temptation?
Interesting. Okay, so I see that. My experience has led me to see that very differently. But maybe I am from a charmed time. I will not deny that there are, when I hear, so I have employees that are much, much younger than me.
Yeah.
And I see them having to deal with Hinge and, things like that. And I'm like, wow, this really is very different. And certainly the apps create pathology around what I think is the broader problem. So I think that What we have is the confluence of everything that allows people to want it all and want it now, and nobody checks them. And so the thing I think we have is, again, there's no lions. And so since nobody's being eaten alive, and there's no just like, hey, you can't act like that, moron, you're going to get eaten. So get your ass inside. There's no being outside after dark. Why? Because you'll be eaten, right? So once all that goes away, it's like, well, why can't I do this? Why can't I do this? And so any one micro thing does not seem like a problem. But then all of a sudden we have strayed so far from the evolutionary truth of the algorithms running in our mind, which will lead to fulfillment, that now all of a sudden, I don't have a beef with how anybody lives their life, but I see people living their lives in a way that does not lead to fulfillment. So I'm just like, hey, from my vantage point, you have too many choices and you're making a lot of dumb ones because you're not acknowledging that running in your brain are evolutionarily planted algorithms that demand you behave in a certain way. And the second you deviate from that, it won't feel good in and of itself. It does not matter what the world tells you. The world can celebrate you all day long for being morbidly obese and you go girl and whatever. I promise, running in your mind is an algorithm. It's like, we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem because your body's not optimized to carry fat like that. It's not. So now you're just in a horrendous place. Fat is kicking off hormones like crazy. Your joints are deteriorating, the whole nine. Like, it is just a cascade of problems. So I don't care if society's like, this is amazing. The algorithms in your brain will tell you, this
I agree.
sucks.
I agree with everything you just said. And I'd also argue that long before they even get a chance at fulfillment, they're already suffering. What percentage of men are going without sex? Large. They're suffering anyway. They're making these bad decisions because they have too much choice, right? They got the video games and the porn and the sex dolls and all these different things they can do. I would argue that they're already suffering.
Agreed.
Yeah. Now, the only thing saving us from these sexless young men going out and shooting up a whole bunch of stuff is that they have these whole incel communities where they kind of have like their own little brotherhood and this weird little thing on the side. And the fact that HD porn is like, think about porn like this. Like, I'm not an advocate for porn, but the one thing porn did do is show the average man what a really beautiful woman looks like naked that they would have never seen otherwise. And now they're stuck to that and they're in this whole incel world and they're sitting in video game chairs and I think they're already paying for it. And they just don't know it. And I think the thing that's stopping them from being very violent is that they have some kind of camaraderie, because now the number of men that don't get attention from women, that don't have a social life, that are overweight, that don't really go outside is becoming so large that they're finding friendship in it somehow. And I do think that's sad. And I think it's multiplying.
Okay. I don't know that we've wrapped this topic up sufficiently, but I do want to know.
We were actually talking about discipline.
Wow, is this where this all branched
off? It branched off from discipline, and I have plenty of sexual discipline.
Fascinating. Yes. Wow.
I have plenty.
It's been a long journey. Okay, so if you have plenty of sexual discipline, as you rethink your answer, where do you land on? Is it just the way that I re-encapsulated it? This is a fun thing. Look, I just in that moment felt really judged by this.
No, I didn't feel judged at all. I just directly don't like hypocritical Christians. I'm not confused about my answer. I have plenty of self-discipline.
Okay. If I remember right, her question, which is, I'll ask the same question sincerely, but from a very different angle. I worry that we have gotten to the point where polygyny is becoming more common because we've hollowed out the middle class effectively. We have allowed and or encouraged men to be weak.
Yep.
And because we don't give them men or women an ideal to strive towards that creates harmony between the sexes, we get this sort of very distorted, bizarre world that we're living in now, which has a lot of negative knock-on effects. One of them is that men at the top are going to get all the women.
That's right.
Yeah. So is it really... It seems to me more that you do it because you can, not because you can't stop yourself.
I do it because I enjoy it. A lot of people talk about like, oh, well, you must need the validation. No,
but
I don't.
You keep saying, you have said in interviews, I'd pay $10 million to not have these urges.
Yeah. No, I think I'd make more money. Okay. I think I'd make more money maybe.
But is the money at this point?
When I say that, I'm really trying to make a point. I do it because I enjoy it.
What's the point?
The point is there was a time in my life where I really struggled with it. And
feeling guilty
I
about
thought
it?
I was broken. Yeah. I no longer feel that way. I was trying to find ways to stop myself from feeling that way. You know what I felt like? I felt like I was going to have to come out of the closet. I swear to God, like I make this joke all the time. It's much easier for gay men than straight men that want to have a lot of sex, because gay men is just accepted. I wanted to come out of the closet to everybody, to the world, and be like, hey guys, listen, I really like women, and I'm going to sleep with a bunch of them. And I know you're going to hate me for it. And that's one of my biggest fears, because I felt like I was going to get kicked out of the group, especially in South Louisiana. I had this girlfriend in college. She was getting ready for Miss America. She won Miss Louisiana. I was having these feelings, and I was trying to fight them. And I remember going to church, and I would pray and pray, God, please don't let me feel this way. Please, please, please. I'm making a mistake. But man, that volleyball team was looking at me hard, man. And that's what I wanted to do. It's really what I wanted to do. And I didn't feel insecure. I didn't need to validate anything to me. It's like literally what I wanted to do. It's like when I drink, I don't drink because I'm sad. I drink because I want to have a good time with my friends, you know, and women have really been the same way. Women have been very good to me in my life. I've had great relationships with them. I've liked them as people. You know, I don't particularly even like to sleep with a woman that I can't get along with or connect on some emotional, intellectual level. I'd say somewhere around 28 that happened. I enjoy it. I like it. They're beautiful. They add to life. You know, they are really literally the cherry on top of life. They're just wonderful people. I love women, and I'm not sorry about that in any way. And I don't think I'm alone in feeling this way, but I think I'm one of very few men in the world that actually say it out loud and be judged for it and be patronized for it. And I don't care, you know, because I know that there's a bunch of men out there that have a bunch of love in their heart, that want to love somebody, that really just have an affinity for women. And I can only love one woman at one time. Like, I love the mother of my children more than anything on this fucking planet. I die for her. I really do.
As long as
I'd
you
also
feel like
appreciate if she bring home a blonde. And she's down. So for me, I don't care what other people say about that, because I have choice in my life. And that's why I always go back to choice, because I trust myself to do the right things with my choice. I'm completely honest. I'm loving. I'm caring. I'll rub her back when she's pregnant, you know, like take care of her in every way, take care of my kids in every way. I would never stab a friend in the back when it comes to a woman. I have plenty of discipline on the subject. And so I'm at complete peace about it.
You can reboot your life, your health, even your career, anything you want. All you need is discipline. I can teach you the tactics that I learned while growing a billion-dollar business that will allow you to see your goals through. Whether you want better health, stronger relationships, a more successful career, any of that is possible with the mindset and business programs in ImpactTheory University. Join the thousands of students who have already accomplished amazing things. Tap now for a free trial and get started today.
What would you do if she said, hey, look, I'm all for it when we're together and we can share this experience, but I would very much not want you to do it without me. Would you adhere to that?
No. But I also think as time goes and I get older, it's probably just going to chill out. It's just going to fizzle, you know?
And do you see yourself being with her forever?
Yeah, I'll take care of her the rest of her life. She has my kids.
But do you see yourself being with her?
Yeah. We're tight. We're best friends. We have conversations about this, you know?
And do you like the idea of being, you're not going to use the word married, I understand that, but permanently pair bonded? I don't know what the normal nomenclature.
As long as you're
would
in
be for
love,
this.
man, it's a beautiful thing.
But-
Love's real, bro.
Yes.
Like, love's real. She has the power to hurt me. If she left me, it would hurt. I would feel it. I would be in deep pain. It wouldn't change my stance. I'd hold strong. But it would be very painful. I always say I'd much rather get my ass whipped than have my heart broke, because it affects the business, it affects everything, you know. So, but no, I have no intentions of ever doing anything but taking care of that woman, and and honestly, it's one of the driving factors in my life as far as work. I quite enjoy it. There's nothing better than coming home and saying, hey, I got this handled. It makes you the hero. And I believe every man, no man wants a woman he can't save from a castle and a dragon. That girl's from a podunk town in Louisiana. Her dad still lives in a trailer, you know, and I take her all over the world. She lives in a humongous fucking house with beautiful kids, gets to raise them. And I go out and try to slay the dragons every day, buying property, building buildings all over the place, doing podcasts, doing stuff online, networking, everything. It's one of the most fulfilling things I do, probably the most. Second to that is helping young men. If they don't want to take the same path as me, I'm completely okay with that. They're not less of a man. If they want to be monogamous for the rest of their life, I think as long as you have choice and you're doing what you truly, truly in your heart want to do, then I think you've succeeded, you included. So that's genuinely how I look at it. But as far as discipline goes, I've got plenty of it. I just am not playing the game. It's like if you were to tell me, if we put a pizza down on this table and you said, Justin, you're not disciplined, why are you eating all this pizza? I'd be like, bro, I'm still going to have a 6-pack at the end of this pizza, bro. You're on a diet, not me. And that's how I feel about it. And what's funny is I say all this on the internet and it doesn't stop my Instagram inbox from filling up with women. I can't even answer the messages. So on some level, I believe that women don't even care as much as people think.
Well, let me ask. So what do you think those women are after? I would assume, knowing what I know about women, it's not just the sex. So are they hoping to become a permanent fixture in your life? Are they hoping that they can turn your head away from your girlfriend? What do you think they're after?
I think all of the above. I think it depends on the woman. Some girlfriends are just trying to have my kids, you know, which is something really interesting I noticed about your situation, is that your wife didn't want to have kids, which was really surprising to me, in that somehow that's okay with you. It surprises me because I didn't say this to you earlier, but I super look up to you. You're a great man. Like, Quest, that's a big fucking deal, dude. Like, you're somebody.
Generous.
Yeah. No, it's just true. It's actually, I'm not even being nice. It's just matter of fact true. And when I think about that, I'm like, bro, TomBilyeu, like, what if he had sons? What would that legacy be? And when I see a guy like you not chase it, it makes me want to chase it even more. You know what I'm saying?
It's good. And thank you for your service, by the way.
Yeah.
And I really mean that. I know it sounds
hell.
super cheeky,
Yeah.
but I am really worried about population collapse and the fact that we've chosen not to have kids.
Bro, you know who's not having kids? The smart people.
Yeah.
The dumb people are having kids, bro.
There's something in that statement, by the way.
Yeah.
There's something to the fact that the more you educate women, the fewer kids are born.
Because they're growing phantom penises, bro.
They're growing phantom penises.
Yes, they are. They're very masculine, and it takes a super, super hyper masculine man to make them feel feminine.
Okay, that was a hard turn. So,
oh, I get that all the time.
Let me reorient. So, yeah, what is the takeaway from that? That's why. So
I feel like women have this
as you educate them.
No,
they have
it's not
less
the
kids.
Education so much. It starts with the education, but then it turns into girl power and feminism and boss bitch stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When I think naturally, the natural state of a woman is to be a little bit more submissive, is to be in not the leadership role, but the helping the cause role. And I think most women ideally don't want to make all the decisions, don't want to pick where dinner is, don't want to make the hard business choices. They don't want to face the pressure and stress of work. There are outliers. Maybe your wife is one of them. But I think by and largely, the average woman does not want that. They don't want that life. They're being forced into that life because men aren't showing up in the same way as they used to. And they have all this pressure from society to be a bad bitch. And so they end up growing what I like to call this phantom penis, you know, where they're kind of more of a man than the guys that are trying to date them. And so we're in this weird paradox where men have to be super, super, super on top of their stuff to even get a woman to want to submit. Because why would a woman want to take a risk on a man that she doesn't even know if he can handle it? Isn't that dangerous to her on a primal level?
Yeah.
And when she makes more money than him and she has a higher prestigious position than him, and she's supposed to come home and they're supposed to be equal partners all of a sudden, I don't believe it. And I know it's not popular, but I just think on a very basic primal level, it's not true. It's not true. And it doesn't, and look, I have very high level women that work for me making multiple 6 figures, big bonus checks. I mean, one percenter. One of my women, the lady that runs my construction company, she is a 1%er. And she deserves every bit of it. And we couldn't make it without her. She's absolutely phenomenal. But she's also substantially older than me, grew up in a different generation. I don't think a woman can be a breadwinner today and there be that same sexual chemistry between her and her husband.
It's an interesting
because of
thesis.
hypergamy.
It's a very interesting thesis. I actually think there's probably more to it than
I think there's
hypergamy.
much more.
So,
Argue with me.
no, unfortunately on this one, all I can do is agree with you. So I think that men want to feel powerful, and just like women want to feel beautiful,
Yes.
if you make a woman feel safe, seen, and desired, then
And heard.
Yep, for sure. Then you're gonna do well. If you make a man feel appreciated and powerful, you're done.
Yeah.
Like,
Done.
that's
There's
it.
much
That's all I
simpler.
need.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very interesting. So this is, now we're getting into the territory of what I think the real problem is.
Cool.
So there's a great quote, I think it was Oscar Wilde, who said, everything is about sex, except sex. That's about power. And the first time, and of course it's overly simplistic. I don't want people to freak out, but the reason that the quote gets people's attention is like, there's a little something to it that really does carry something. And so we'll take my wife, and I wish she was here so people could see, trust me, I'm not putting words in my wife's mouth. This is something that we've talked about a lot. So my wife wanted to be a bad bitch. She woke up one day and was like, you know what? I want to go on my entrepreneur arc. I really like this. I'm good at it, which is true. She is unbelievable. Best business partner I've had. She's amazing. And at the same time, I was like, hey, just to be clear, I'm not interested in fighting for the role of leader in the family. But at the same time, I'm never going to ask you to slow down so I can lead. But when I'm better than you at something, I'm not going to pretend that you're better than me. And when you're better than me at something, we're not going to pretend that I'm not better. But in no uncertain, like when we founded Impact Theory, I said, hey, I am perfectly happy to split the money that we have earned. You earned your half for sure. Happy to give you your half. You can go run a business, whatever business you want, and I'll take my half and I'll go run a business. Or we can run it together. If we're going to run it together though, then, and it's important to note at this point that the attorneys were like, hey, if you guys decide to run it together, one of you needs to have 51%, one of you needs to have 49%. Otherwise, it's the perfect divorce nightmare. And Lisa was like, obviously, you take 51%, like makes all the sense in the world. You work harder than me, totally get it. I was like, absolutely not, over my dead body. I want the ultimate divorce nightmare because we're never getting divorced. And it's up to me to be able to navigate this well enough that we don't get divorced. So I'm like, I'm all in. I want you to understand you're more important to me than the business, and I want to put my money where my mouth is. So the company is 50-50. And so if we ever get into a divorce, fucking everything blows up. I love it. I love it.
I hate it.
I understand. So we've got the company 50-50. So I said, okay, if we're going to do that, then just know that, of course, you're amazing. I know what you're capable of. And we will always try to convince each other. If I think one thing is right, I'll try to convince you. If you think something's right, you try to convince me. And I
love all that.
And yeah, and we'll honor that 100. Obviously, if you have a woman running your company, you know that any individual, anything can be
love to be
the
wrong.
best.
Yeah.
Right? It's wonderful. When
I don't need to be
right.
right. I need to win. And I don't care who says it.
I say the same thing all the time.
Yep.
So, but I want to be clear, dear wife of mine, that if we can't convince each other, we will go with my idea every time. And if you're cool with that, then we can do it together. And if you're not cool with that, I totally understand, but you can't ever find ourselves in a stalemate. So one of us has to be the final arbiter.
It has
now,
to
the
be
way
that way.
Yeah, the way it normally breaks down is if I know it's an area of her expertise, then I'm just going to be like, okay, it makes more sense to go with your thing. But a few times it really has come down to, I understand your position perfectly and think you're wrong. You understand my position perfectly and think I'm wrong. And we're just going to, then I'm the tiebreaker.
Right.
So look, you can work this stuff out. And I really do believe if in those moments I didn't feel like I was the right person to lead, because by the way, I came to that conclusion because we both think I'm the right person to make that decision. My wife was not like, oh my God, like this is so unfair. She was like, yeah, you're the right person to make that decision. Now, the problem becomes, what if you're in a marriage and you get to that point and she's like, I don't think you're the right person to make that decision. I think all emotional hell breaks loose. I don't know how he gets an erection, and I don't know how she would want to ever find herself under him. And look, maybe that's me being old. I don't know.
That goes back to my respect equals love thing. Your wife respects you because of the businessman that you were. And for that reason, she gave you the nod to make these critical decisions. And that's all I really meant by respect equals love. It's the respect. And as long as she respects you and looks up to you in the way that she wants you making those decisions, she will want to sleep with you. And that's what I meant by what I said earlier. So everything that you just said sounds good to me.
Right,
in fact, it's even better that you gave her more stock. Like, the money is aside, like, give her the 51%, whatever. But the fact that she came to you as the decision maker, I think, is ideal.
Yeah. So
and you earned it.
These are the easy parts. Now we want to get into the hard part, which is, okay, Mr. Bilyeu, if you're correct, and this is really the way to move forward, what do you do when you unshackle women, educate the shit out of them? They're better at education, so they're pulling ahead. They are usually more conscientious, more organized. So they're
easier to
be
manage
disciplined.
a lot of times, yeah.
Yep, less problematic.
More organized.
And so they fire ahead of men.
Yep.
Now what? JWaller. What do we do? Because that is the situation we find ourselves in. Women are finally, thank God, unshackled. And all of society now gets to benefit from their insights, their wisdom, their talents, all of it. But it creates a dynamic which is, at least in pockets, problematic. Because if hypergamy is real, and it does seem to be, maybe it will diminish over time. There'll probably be second and third order consequences to that. But for now, it's pretty steady that they're still going over and up.
Mm-hmm.
But the pool of men that qualify for over or up is diminishing by the second.
I think one or two things will happen. Either we will go back to that kind of that polygamy situation like we talked about before, or we're going to have to go all the way socialist and nobody owns anything. But either way, I think it's going to get ugly.
I don't understand how that.
You know how they say that there's going to be some point that nobody's going to own anything and they like it? It's some bullshit that the left's putting on.
Yeah, but yeah,
but
we can derail on that.
Right. Yeah. It won't work. So, I don't think it's going to be pretty. I think there's going to be more and more men that are sexless, and I think there's going to be more and more women that have this natural urge in them, this maternal urge, the thing that God truly gifted them with, their superpower, that they're not going to be able to fulfill it. And they're going to end up working for these big corporations that allow them to freeze their eggs or have abortions or do these other things, and they're going to miss out on probably the most beautiful and most important job in the world, and that's being a mother. And also, I might add, the hardest job in the world. And it's a shame.
Do you think that will self-correct?
I think it would have to. I don't know that the powers that be don't want less people. They're worried about the climate and everything. But I think it would have to self-correct. I think as humans, we're naturally going to self-correct anything that will allow survival. So maybe we start putting incentive programs to have babies. Maybe we champion women that are...
I think they did that in Japan. I don't think it's helped.
Maybe not.
Because I think if the underlying problem persists...
The hypergamy thing.
Yeah. I'll even say it the other way. If the ideal that men strive for is weakness, is supplication, then this problem will persist. And this is... So you said something earlier that actually really hit me and I like a lot. And I'm going to imagine as one of the more inflammatory things you've said, which is a real man is somebody who can go from slitting a throat to holding a baby in the same day. Yeah. I think most guys are like, word, and most women are mortified. So one of the
I disagree. I think that a woman...
Tell me more.
I think that a woman, most women, even the hard ones, even the big boss bitch women, ultimately, if the right man sits in front of her at the table and he controls his frame and he is truly meaning what he's saying, and she finds him to be competent, charming, and all the other things, that she will gladly put down the boss bitch crown and be submissive and be happy inside that role. I just don't think those men are walking around everywhere.
Interesting. I think you're going to have a PR problem.
Maybe.
So I don't know that you're wrong in the final analysis, but as I think about how do we get there? So take my own wife. One of the angles that I considered for the episode was Jordan Peterson has a really powerful idea. And he said, being harmless is not virtuous.
That's right.
And so it was like harmless men are weak was like the angle. And even my wife was like, no, that's horrible. She was like, yeah, she was like, as a woman, I want a guy to be harmless towards me. Now, I think they're wrong. And I think what my wife, who I know better than anyone on this planet, what she wants is for me to be
Dangerous
covered,
to them.
yes, covered in the blood of my enemies. Even easier, covered in the blood of her enemies, that I slay anyone that tries to damage her or touch this family or hurt us in some way, that I would go on the offensive and that she never has to worry.
And she's safe in your arms.
Correct. And going back to Jordan Peterson's idea of, so his whole thing, his analysis, I don't know that this is true, I'd have to look into it, but the idea of the meek shall inherit the earth. And I never understood that. And because I read meek is weak. And I was like, why on God's green earth would weak people ever inherit the earth? They're not going to. It just, the world does not work in that way. And his read is that meek in old Latin or Greek or whatever actually meant the person capable of great violence that keeps their sword sheathed. So Bruce Lee says, the best way to win a fight is to not engage. But you're only choosing, going back to your idea of choice, you're only choosing whether to fight if you actually can fight. Otherwise, you're just being a coward.
That's right.
And so that to me feels like the real analysis. But the way that it's talked about, especially now, this message was approved, is all about being aggressive is toxic. Like, I am very stubborn about the idea of mansplaining. I'm going to mansplain whatever the fuck.
Okay.
Like, if mansplaining.
What is that?
You actually have not heard that phrase? Wow, that's impossible. So mansplaining is where a guy is inappropriately explaining something to other people as if they don't understand it. And my read is, if you assume that somebody is doing anything other than either trying to be generous with their knowledge, or they're just excited that they know something and they want to share it, and that's a pretty natural thing to be like, oh my God, I know something I want to like show that I know about basket weaving or whatever. That I think is what's really going on. Anyway, that one winds me up, but that's my own hang up.
Do you know another thing that's kind of on that topic of the being strong thing, this fake virtue signaling when they're really just cowards? A lot of women fall for the mistake of the men that were like, I would never do that. There's a huge difference between not being able to get women and being loyal. And that's one thing that I find to be very hypocritical of a lot of men that will run around and talk about, I would never do that. I would never do this, this, and this. Oh no, my friend, you can't. So don't say that you're loyal when it's really just your inability to garner attention from other women. Same thing with violence. Don't act like you turn the other cheek if you have just not created a scenario where you're physically capable of such, So I believe completely in what you're saying. I completely agree. I have a question for you.
Please.
What are your thoughts on Jordan Peterson?
So I think he's amazing. I think he tweets like a maniac. And if I could get him to stop tweeting, I would. I don't like this sort of bitterness vibe, but I think that he is once again onto something critically important, which is, okay, we've lost God at the center of our mythology and our self-understanding, and that has had critical implications. He wants to refill that hole with religion. I think that's played out, but I do think that it does have to be replaced with a shared narrative. I don't think that shared narrative has to be asking people to believe that there really is this divine creature or whatever, but I do think that we need something. It has to be shared. It is the fact that we don't share a mythology that's causing a problem, in my opinion.
I agree that Christianity is the reason that we live in civilization the way we do today. I think Christianity was very, very, very good for us as humans to work together and have morals and not kill each other and not rape and pillage. I agree with that. I also think that you're probably right that he's not going to save it religion. I do find it quite interesting that he had this huge epiphany at such an age and after something negative has happened to him. I think that's very interesting, and I think a lot of people that go to Christianity wait until something bad happens and then they come out of it Christians. I find that interesting for sure.
In what way? You find it interesting? I don't know what your read is on Christianity. Good, bad, in a today context.
I believe in God.
A Christian God?
I believe that there's a God in some collective consciousness.
Can you define a God?
I think that God exists in our collective consciousness of knowing what's right and wrong and what's best for the
If
species.
humans were wiped out, would God cease to exist?
Probably.
Okay, so it's an idea that we all share.
But but why he's real, right? Why God's real. I heard Andrew say this, and I really resonate with it. He said, if you were on a ship and it wrecked, and there were two islands, and you could swim one or two directions, and you swam towards the island of a godless island, savages, they would kill you. But if you swam left, and it was a religious society, and because of God, their God, they did not kill you and you lived. Is God real? And in that perspective, I think Andrew is right. Do I think there's a guy in heaven that's going to send me to hell for sleeping with women or doing stuff that people don't like sometimes or saying the truth? No, I don't. I don't. In regards to Jordan, I think it's interesting because he lived his entire life before something bad happened to him. And I just think it's kind of a system, it's a pattern. People have something bad and they run to God all of a sudden. I do think that's interesting. And what is it there that's allowing him to hold it? You know, like the bad time is over. He's probably got another book out by now. What is it for him? And then this is a genuine question that's allowing him to still hold on to it or not feel like a bit of a hypocrite inside.
So he's, assuming nothing falls apart, he's coming on the show late in the year this year, and I want to ask him precisely about this idea. Now the book he's writing is about, I think it's called, temporarily anyway, those that struggle with God. Now I still don't know. I don't know how he would answer the question now. Do you believe in God? Because for a long time he said, I act as if. So in the beginning, he was like, I don't, but I act as if. Then it was just, I act as if. And now I'd be very curious to know if he's really like refound a Christian style faith, or if he looks at the Bible the way I do, which is a monomyth. It is a way for everybody in society to rally around these set of principles and ideas.
And it's very good for society in many ways.
Depending on what slots into that, yes. So Christianity has, on balance, probably been good. If you were in the middle of the Crusades and you were on the Muslim side, you probably weren't a big fan.
Right.
But I think that probably on balance, if we're really going to, and I have not looked at this problem well enough, I'm now at the edge of what I understand. I always like to disclose that. But taking the frame for a second that Western civilization really is largely born of a Judeo-Christian ethic, and that we can therefore, if society is really downstream of that belief system, and then we can look at what we have and go, okay, cool, does that good or bad? I would say Western civilization is an unbelievable miracle that yanks people out of poverty as fast as humanly possible. So yeah, I'm certainly a fan of the result.
Do you trust that he's even going to tell you the truth?
Jordan?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Aggressively. Now, I don't know Jordan well. I've interviewed him, but I've never had an interaction with him that wasn't an interview. But from everything that he pushes out, that man has taken more smoke, brought more smoke on him for just saying what he believes is true. If he's lying, bro, pick a better lie. Because this guy is like constantly embroiled in like lawsuits and governmental bodies and like, God damn, if this is him lying, holy shit. So yeah, that would just be nonsensical. So the only thing, so here's something I really share with him. There is a trifecta of books. If people have not read them, they must. You know nothing about humans until you read the following 3 books. And that is The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, and Mao, the Untold Story. And when you read those books, which are like the 3 great genocides, really, of the 20th century, it's unimaginable. It's unimaginable how evil people can be. Like how, oh God, much rather be a dog on Visqueen sliding into a crocodile's mouth.
Yeah.
Like humans can be so gnarly. It's almost impossible to imagine. And so those books just go into painstaking detail. There's another one, honorary mention, called The Red Famine. And that just happens to be basically about the same thing as the Gulag Archipelago. But in it, there was effectively a manufactured famine in the Ukraine in the 1920s. and they killed what were called the kulaks. And the kulaks were basically the successful farmers. So imagine like your high performing entrepreneurs. When people say eat the rich, what I hear is kill the kulaks.
Right.
And I'm just like, bro, this experiment has been run. And in the book, this woman, they casually just mentioned this woman's walking by her neighbor's house in the middle of the winter. This is the Ukraine, okay? It's not like a winter in California.
I've been.
It's a fucking winter.
Yeah.
She's walking by her neighbor's house. She looks in the window and she sees a woman eating her 7-year-old daughter. That's what humans are capable of. And so from the lunacy of killing your best performing farmers to like, well, my daughter's only 7. If I eat her, at least I can survive.
Yeah.
If she eats me, she's still going to die. She's only 7, doesn't know how to do anything. So I'm just going to fucking eat her. Like, now remember, I see myself in that story, and I am terrified that that line of good and evil runs through my own heart. And do I want to say that I would never? Yes. But as you were saying earlier, so humans are capable of some really, really horrendous things. And so Jordan turned me on to the Gulag Archipelago, really got me thinking about just how horrendous people can be.
Makes sense. I'll have to read those.
It's it's super intense. Now, what made you ask about Jordan Peterson?
There are times where I feel like he's a bit hypocritical.
Really?
Yeah.
Because he used to be atheist. I don't know if he ever would use that word. And now he's...
No issue with that, really. It's really more to me about running around talking about being mentally tough and then jumping on medications and having to go to rehab and things like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like he's running around telling young men to be strong and all this other shit. And then the first thing he does is go start popping pills and doesn't face it. And he also talks about being capable. I don't find him to be overly capable. I know he's an older man. I don't mean no disrespect to him. He's very well accomplished, has accomplished a lot. I would never disrespect him. But in those regards, I found him to be a bit hypocritical.
Interesting. Okay, so you and I see this very differently. Let me see if I can convince you.
Yeah.
Here's my read on Jordan for sure. And just about anybody in that position, I think I'd feel the same. So my read on Jordan is you have a very successful college professor who, as far as academics go, has an amazing career. He already has multiple streams of revenue because he is extraordinarily smart. He wrote his book on mythology, Maps of Meaning, as a storyteller. Like that's one of the most profound books I've read. It's just
Didn't say he wasn't talented.
Unbelievable. No, we'll get there. But like, I'm trying to paint a picture of somebody who has everything going for him. His life is amazing.
He does. He's stud.
But this is back right before Bill C-16. So pre-Bill C-16, all this going for him, doing great, taught at Harvard for a while. I mean, you don't get a better academic career. He's got a private practice. He's helping a lot of people, turning around lives. He spent, I forget how many hours he said, something like 32 hours trying to teach a man with, I think, an 84 IQ how to fold paper and put it in an envelope. Like, this is a guy that has really gone out of his way to help humanity.
Great man.
So you got to bear with me. I'll get there. So, because what I'm building towards is hypocrisy.
Okay, cool.
So he's got this life. Now Bill C-16 pops up. He's read the Gulag Archipelago. He's read Mao the Untold Story. He knows the rise and fall of the Third Reich. He knows what humans are capable of. And he believes, not to put words in his mouth, this is my interpretation, that he believes that all it takes for all hell to break loose is for good men to remain silent in that moment where it's going to be self-destructive to stand up for what you believe is true. And so he says, hey,
I don't think we're far from that now.
Agreed. I think he was the tip of the spear.
Yeah.
So he ends up standing up for it. And for all intents and purposes, it ends up working out okay in many ways. But for all intents and purposes, he has devastating consequences in his life. I mean, just blows his life up, gets one of the biggest cancellations you're ever going to see. I mean, just ruthless. And he builds back. And I think he says now he's got like 10 lawsuits happening at once. I mean, for him to stand up and speak about what he thinks is true, he has paid an extraordinary price. Now, if he is right, that all it takes for evil to take over is for good men to say nothing, then sort of whether somebody reads his actions as hypocritical or not, he's done this amazing service. Okay. In my view.
Agreed.
So he pays this tremendous price, does this very important thing. Now, let's say his wife gets diagnosed, his wife gets diagnosed in the middle of all this madness. His wife gets diagnosed with cancer, and all of a sudden he has anxiety just overwhelming him. Now, I have to imagine the vast majority of humanity has anxiety way before that moment. And so he struggles. Now, could we really say that Jordan has not worked on being mentally tough? That seems insane to me. But here's a guy who's like, I'm going to take every tool that's available to me. And drugs are one of the tools available to me. Now, I would advise him and anybody that will listen to me, do not take a drug that you have to take every day. I don't take anything every day except Zyrtec, which is an antihistamine. And even that, I'm like, I shouldn't be taking this every day. So I don't think people should take any substance every day. But if you have an anxiety or depression disorder and you have not mastered it yet, and you need in acute situations a pharmacological intervention, I'm all for that. Now, I think he would agree that the way he went about it was foolish, and I doubt he'd do it again. But with all of that crashing down on him, the fact that he has a breaking point, like everybody has a breaking point. The fact that he used an exogenous substance to try to deal with it, like whatever, use everything at your disposal. And I agree with that, use everything at your disposal. To the point of, for sure, if I ever needed drugs, I would do it. I would try to do everything in my power first, for sure. But as somebody that dealt with profound anxiety, and the only reason I didn't take anxiety medication at the height of that was because I was so terrified. I didn't take daily anxiety medication. I was so terrified of taking anything daily. But acute, yes. I was like, dude, I don't know what the fuck is going on, but I feel like I'm in a constant state of dread, and I don't know why. Now, what it ended up being is my diet, but at the time I didn't know that. I had no idea. So I felt completely lost in the woods. Now, but I still, even though I wasn't on camera at the time, I still would tell people, anybody who'd listen, you got to be toughening your mind. I'm saying it to myself. And I'm like, but I was very open. I have this anxiety. I don't know why the fuck. I'm working through it. It doesn't feel critical to me.
And there we are.
Yeah.
Do you feel like he was as transparent as you are right now?
Because I agree. Never hit me that he was. I didn't know that he was or wasn't talking about.
I agree with everything you just said. My problem, not even really a problem, because I don't have a problem with him. The inconsistency I see is that he was not as transparent as you are right now.
It didn't hit me weird at all. So one, when I look at humans, I assume they are deeply flawed, and Jordan Peterson and TomBilyeu
and Justin Waller,
for sure,
completely flawed,
deeply flawed
every way.
So man, I look at him, if I'm being honest, even though I look at things like his tweets and they make me angry because I'm like, Jordan, what the fuck are you doing? He did a whole podcast about how he tweets like a psychopath and he should probably stop. Yes, you should. It was a great podcast, by the way, Jordan. Take that advice. But I really do believe that he has been, and I get made fun of. I'm not sure what the right word is. I think people that stand up for what they believe in are brave. And that for a long time, Justin Waller, I hid behind my guests on my own interview show, and I didn't say what I believed. And if people were saying something that I thought, that's fucking crazy, I just stayed quiet. And I was like, I'm going to edit that out. And then I started, when COVID kicked off, I felt like a coward, and I didn't like that feeling. And so I was like, well, now I'm going to have to start talking about this. And I didn't want to, because I was looking at Jordan Peterson. Understand, you don't know this about me. You asked me about this before we started rolling. I never got to the punchline. This shirt is a character I created in the video game that we're building. And that is the joy of my life, is telling stories that empower people. So anyway, I want to be the next Walt Disney, man.
Yeah.
And I know that I've said 90 things in this podcast alone that are going to make a certain set of people never want to interact with my games or whatever.
Right.
And that makes me sad. But I don't want to be a coward.
It makes me happy for you, because I feel like the truest form of living life is living life on your own terms and speaking your truth. One thing I've learned about going on social media is that, yeah, maybe some people hate me, but I get 10x love and a deeper love from people that really appreciate me for who I actually am.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that reason, you'll have a cult following of people that play your game. And anybody else was going to wait till you said something else they didn't like and bail on you anyway. So fuck them.
That is the final analysis. But you and I both know that if you're going to get anywhere useful in life, you can't lead with your emotions.
Correct.
And so you might think fuck them, but for everybody listening, I would highly encourage you to move through life with integrity and strategy. You can't just be a dumbass bull in a china shop that says whatever the fuck all the time.
What have you said on this podcast that was not integrity?
I've been entirely in integrity in this podcast.
Exactly. So if those people were to not play your video game because you just stated the truth, aren't you still in integrity, and aren't they just going to hate you later when you say something else they don't like?
Okay. I'm going to give, since you're his friend, I'm going to give Andrew Tate advice through you. Dear Andrew, you're very smart, and you're going to positively impact a lot of people. But the way that you frame things in such an inflammatory way is fucking moronic.
Okay.
Because you brought a lot of attention. But now, let's assume, and I don't know, I know you do, and I know you are 100% convinced that he's innocent, and I love that. Even if you're wrong, I love that you're loyal and all that. So no disrespect. I don't know the fucking guy, never met him, nothing. But he's on camera saying things that I would have advised him not to say ever, even if he's joking. So he has, by not being as strategic as he should have been, and I've heard him admit, he always couches it, seeing how influential I am now, I would have said things differently. Yes, very wise. Because the reality is the way that he has purported himself, again, assuming that he did not do these things, the way that he put himself out there, got him a huge following, and made him a literal enemy of the state. And at some point, man, that was not as strategic of a move as it could have been. So there, I'm just like, you need to have integrity. You need to say what is true, but you also need to be real. What is the world really like? And you talk about that. You want your kids to know what the world is really like. And the world is really like. There are other powerful forces out there. And if you pretend that they're not, you're going to get blindsided by dumb shit that you could have avoided.
End of message.
End of message.
Okay. Message as Andrew's friend. Andrew may have said some things that he didn't, that might not serve him now. He might have said them very loudly when he had a small following. Andrew, like Jordan, is not perfect, but I do think he's a greater good than Jordan. That's going to piss some people off.
Fine.
But I can tell you right now, Andrew's faced just as much as Jordan, if
At
not
this
more,
point, probably more.
if not more, keeping a completely sober mind, doing push-ups, having young men get better all over the world, despite the fact that he's the enemy of the state.
Mm-hmm.
He's turned it around and has helped many young men go to Islam. Whether you agree with that or not is, I guess, a non-issue, but it is definitely a stronger path than degeneracy. Getting them fit, teaching them to make money all over the world in the real world, which I also promote. And I would argue that Andrew Tate is one of the greatest forces for good and truth that exists in the world today, in front of your friend Jordan.
So on that, I would say, so again, I don't know Andrew, so take all of my comments with a grain of salt as somebody who's not an Andrew scholar. But looking at it from the outside, I see hypocrisy in his actions from, and I don't know Islam well enough. So again, I'm a headline reader right now, but at a headline reader level, him saying that, women shouldn't be on OnlyFans, but then profiting off of women being on OnlyFans does not strike me as non-hypocritical. Also, and I think this is like, so when I look at Jordan and Jordan saying, yeah, fuck, I needed the medication and I had to do it. And I never read it as he wasn't being honest. I don't know if he talked about it or whatever, but I was impressed when Andrew wrote the tweet saying, I can't remember if he said one day he said, I almost cried in jail today, almost. And I thought, whoa, like he's actually being honest and he's being vulnerable. And then the other day he put out a post, and this is pretty recent. He's back home under house arrest. And he said, I haven't slept more than 45 minutes a night because I'm so worried. I don't remember if he used the word worried, but it was like, okay, whoa, like obviously this is really weighing on him and all that. Now that was not a signal to me that you have a person with a weak mind, nor is it a signal to me that Jordan having anxiety is a signal of a person with a weak mind. Now, if Jordan had been screaming from the rooftops anybody that's on pharmacology is a fucking idiot, and what are you doing? And that makes you weak and bad. And then it came out that he was using it. I have to imagine if he didn't out and out say, I've prescribed this to my patients and it's helped a lot of people. When I heard he was on it, I was like, oh yeah, like it didn't even make my radar as like, oh, that doesn't mean that you're strong anymore. Plus, let's say that Jordan is the weakest person in the world. I would still
Which
want
I don't
him to
believe.
say, no, and you haven't said that. I'm just saying, even if he was, I would still want him to say, hey guys, look, I'm totally weak, but I really encourage you to be strong. And I know that because I'm weak, you guys aren't going to take it as seriously, but it really, from all the clients I've seen, like that really feels like the right way to get the most out of your life. Like the right message is the right message. And that is, if somebody deploys, this is how I judge all advice. If somebody deploys your advice in their real life, will it move them towards human flourishing and reduce suffering? If yes, good advice. If no, bad advice. That simple. And so I don't care if it comes from the most flawed person in the universe. And this is how Tate made my radar. Because I was like, look, I got to admit, pretty inflammatory, kind of freaks me out. But 10% of what he says is really real, and you would be a fool to dismiss. And so yeah, I don't have the response to anybody that says a true message from what you're calling a hypocritical stance that you do, because I think most people are flawed. I can only imagine if people went back through everything I've ever said, I've said a ton of dumb, hypocritical shit.
Man.
And so I'm just like, oh God. So anyway, I look at people as wildly flawed individuals, hopefully trying to do their best, knowing that people will walk lines, flirt with shit that they probably shouldn't. But I know about myself that if every word I had ever said were recorded, especially with my wife, who I lay some outrageous shit on her, I would not like that. So I give everyone that grace.
Yeah. What makes you happy?
JWaller, are you now interviewing me?
Yes.
What makes me happy?
We can argue about Jordan and Tate if you want to.
If there's more to say, I'm happy to say it. I said everything I had to say. If you have more to say, please.
There's no bullet I won't take for Tate. I know that.
Let's talk about that just at a brotherhood level. So if you take a bullet for Tate, you die and leave your kids alone.
No. Andrew would take care of my whole family. What do you mean?
So because of that, if that weren't in place, is that a key part of why you would take a bullet?
That's just an understood that he'd take care of everything. I think that the relationship we have fosters itself to fighting for each other in every way. So he does things for me all the time. In fact, just the other day I needed something. He texts the CEO immediately. I mean, like, we're constantly working together and doing things. When he was in jail, I would go pick his mom up and stepdad meet them and take them to lunch. You know, we cover each other like that. It's honor. It's something that I think is highly missing. Brotherhood is highly missing from young men today. They're on their phones, they're by themselves. I have a real relationship with a real person. I told Andrew this once, man. I was like, dude, I got nothing against Cobra Tate, but I love Andrew. And there's no JWaller when I'm at his house. It's, hey, Justin, or Cowboy, or whatever. And so it's just something that I feel like a lot of people are missing. A lot of people think that we're missing something, our group of friends. You know, oh, you don't have kids. Well, newsflash, I got kids. Oh, you don't have this. Dude, I have it all. I literally have everything. I have family. I have children that love me. I have a wife that loves me. My mother-in-law brings my kids out to my car when I leave for work. I got Andrew. I have brotherhood. I have Tristan. I have the whole war room. There's nothing missing from my life. I am truly, truly happy in every way. I think a lot of people want to hate on our group and say that we're not happy, or like we were aimlessly sleeping with all these women and stuff. And it's just not true. Just last week when I was at his house, he's sitting here, I'm sitting by his mom, his stepdad's over here, Tristan's here. We're all joking, laughing. His kickboxing coach is across the way, screaming at us to eat onions because it makes us stronger. It was a family. It was the most wholesome thing you've ever seen. I always say the best side of Andrew is the side that the world never sees. And if I were ever to give him advice, it would be to show who you are when it's just us, because it's one of the most incredible men you'll ever meet. And of course I'm going to feel that way. Of course I'm biased. Of course I feel that way about my closest friends and Tristan and Sterling Cooper and some of these other guys and some of the guys that I know from the war room, of course. But it is such a great honor for me to be able to protect and stick up for them with the opportunity that I've been given, and I won't let that pass me by.
What would you do if you found something that made you believe he is guilty?
It would break my heart. Because if he's guilty, not only am I wrong, I'm a fool. Because I've spent way too much time in his house. He would have had to do it right underneath my nose. He would have had to be doing it in multiple cities like, it's just not even a thought in my mind. It's not even a possibility. I've been around him way too much. I have way too many employees. I've been lied to way too many times. I would have caught a micro expression somewhere. He is the most consistent person I know. And Tristan, for that matter. I don't worry about whether they're going to get upset with me about something or if we're going to argue about something. I've never had an argument with either one of them. We've debated for sure and enjoy doing it, and it's fun. But it's only about getting better and what the goal is and on the mission to the goal. It's never personal. He's one of the most consistent people I've ever met. Truly. I know what to expect when I talk to him. So I hope that answers the question. But
it does. I have another layer to that. So now
please.
Abstract it, because what I find interesting in you and what I think you represent, and what I hope young men hear from you, there is something special that they should be unapologetic about building a group of men that hold them to a standard, and that they hold them to a standard, and that they have a brotherhood, and that there is honor, and that hopefully that they love a small, almost inevitably, a small group of people that they would lay their lives down for. And this is, if I can imagine that very little good comes out of war, but that tends to be where people say, like, I've never had that sort of camaraderie like I did when we had a shared adversary and our backs were against the wall and it really was live or die. We're wired for that as a species. And so in a modern context, you don't really get that. I had that a little bit in business, and every now and then there'll be a clique inside the company. Right now we have a crew of guys, and it's not this far to being like, I take a bullet for these guys, but it feels different. There's a group that stays really late every night, not because they have to, but because they want to. And it fills something in my life that I don't get anywhere else. And so the edge I want to explore with that is, I've heard you say that you had been betrayed before. And so it really took you a minute to trust, but that giving yourself over like that again and trusting again felt awesome. And so I want to know, what would you do if you then felt betrayed by them? Anybody, you're like abstracted from them, because I'm not asking a question about them, but you're in a group of people and you feel that sense of brotherhood, camaraderie, and all that. But then there is a betrayal. Would you go, fuck, I knew it, like this was all bullshit and it could never last? Or is it like, bad apple, remove them, I understand now what better to look for, have to protect the brotherhood?
Absolutely bad apple. Because I think having family and people you can trust relentlessly is one of the highest peaks of human joy. I really do. There's a special feeling that crosses through me when I know for a fact, if I were to die today, that my kids would have to worry for nothing. And there's a certain honor I get from knowing that if he were to die today, that I would take care of his kids in the same way. I think it's a very rare thing in the world today. And that's why I believe we're true. We're not rich, we're wealthy. I genuinely believe that. So if someone were to hurt me today, it would suck. And I would have to process it just like any other human. I would feel the pain just like any other human. I'm not superhuman. I'm, like you said, plenty of flaws. But I don't find it to be productive for me to shut off the ability to trust moving forward, because without trust, there's no speed. And without speed, there's no money, there's no love, there's no growth, there's no business, and there's no family. So you would have to trust again.
How did you guys build that trust?
Over time, we spent a lot of time together. I think you learn a lot about a person when you look them in the eyes. You go through adversity together. We train together. We do all kinds of things together. Just the other day, we were doing mitt work, and Amir is his trainer from Storm and Luton. And Amir was punching me like crazy, and he was hitting me in the solar plexus with the pad. If you've seen Amir, imagine a silverback gorilla with pads in his hand, he's going to punch you. And he kept knocking the breath out of me, and it's cardio boxing. And just dying, just tapping hands, going in, and you go through things together, been through the mountains together, done war room events together, been in situations in Odessa, Ukraine, and in Dubai, and like, okay, well, you do this, I do this, boom, 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 we'll get this done, bam, boom. You know, we work together on a daily basis. The real world is, in my opinion, probably the best online school that's out there right now. And I think that a kid would be better off doing the real world than he would be going to Stanford. And the reason is because there's millionaires that are doing that business that day, teaching you in real time. And there's a group of people helping you instead of you studying. It's like, hey, here's the answer. This is what works. And so doing that with him and doing that with those young men and helping them grow. No, there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. It's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life. Nobody thanks me for giving them a roof over their head when they pay rent. And certainly not when I hit a construction schedule. So I've never been happier doing this. And that's largely in part to him, you know, asking me to come on and help be a part of it. And I'd much rather be on a team that wins championships than be Kevin Garnett and never win anything, you know, and be the best player on my team. I think it's lame. And I think
that's very unusual.
Yeah. Well, I also believe that Scottie Pippen was one of the best players ever because he could have left and been the star somewhere, but he decided not to because he saw what Michael had. And for that reason, they had plenty of trophies. And I think in the end, if you can be selfless enough to look at where it makes the most sense, maybe you could have been the 5th best player in the league, or you could have been the number 1, 2 man ever to live. So to me, man, I know who I am as a person. I have tons and tons of employees. I don't need the ego boost. I want to win and I want to do the right thing for these young men. And I believe that what I'm doing with Andrew is that. So there's no other direction for me to go.
Do you guys have like a credo? Do you guys have a list of things like, to be in this brotherhood, you must adhere to these 5 principles?
Andrew has 41 tenets. I don't know them by heart. He wrote them right after he went to jail. You can easily find them online. And
is that an active part of the core group of guys? How many of you are there in like the tight circle?
4 or 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you guys live by those things? Obviously not.
There's not a credo there, right? But I'll tell you another thing about Andrew that people don't know. He has friends that are from 20 years ago, never became, you know, super famous or rich or anything like that. He still flies them over to spend time boxing and training together. You'll see them sometimes in Tate Confidential. These are very normal guys that he's had 20-year relationships that he refuses to turn his back on. You know, is there a creed amongst our group of friends? The obvious stuff, you know, do what you say you're going to do, show up and train, you know, be ruthlessly loyal around the subject of women and money. I believe you can learn a lot about a person by just women and money alone. And I don't particularly like to have friends that are not in abundance of either, because if they find themselves in a desperate situation, they will fall to their desperation. And so we try our best to keep men around us that at least have done the work and the ethics to put themselves in a position to have a little bit of money and women, or there's a relationship that's so old, you know, nobody would ever snake you. And so the group has that. We haven't written them down. There's not a credo where I don't think we're getting like group tattoos or anything. So
I don't know, why not?
yeah.
Okay, talk to me about the frame. Like, what does it mean to have a frame, hold a frame?
Yeah. I believe it's a man's job to be a leader, and I think he should lead with conviction. And I think it's not a popular thing to say, but I think it's overwhelmingly true that women would rather a man come in, be strong, be the rock that all of her emotional waves crash into, because let's face it, women are more emotional than men. I don't believe that men should show a lot of emotion. I do think it's okay at times if they do, but I think overdoing that, especially with your partner, is not a good idea as a man. I believe that men should open doors. I believe they should pay every tab. I believe they should make call the shots in the household and make all the business decisions. It's when a man has not put himself in a position to get that respect and trust from a woman that all falls down. So a lot of men, they want that respect. They want to be the leader. They want to do do the things that, you know, a leader should get. But then in turn, they oftentimes are not doing the right things to deserve that credit from the woman. And so she doesn't give that to him. And for that reason, I think a lot of situations, fail when the man doesn't show up the way that he should. But I think ideally a man should not only be strong enough to make all decisions, but even protect her from things that are not going to be ideal for the relationship, like having a crazy social media with your ass and titties everywhere. Not popular, but true.
Okay,
You know?
so what does it mean to hold the frame?
Women are going to naturally, what they call shit test, right? To test you to see how confident you are. Have you ever heard of a shit test?
I haven't, no.
Really?
I'm so outside of this world, but I find it
Yeah.
absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. So it is a real thing. Like a girl might, here's one that's going to piss some people off. Let's do this. Let's say your girlfriend comes to me and she's like, hey babe, I want to go on a girls trip. No. You got a problem with that, right? You normally you would.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I would never say no. I don't even understand the impulse yet.
So no is, why would I put my girl in a club somewhere all dolled up in a dress and high heels with a bunch of other single women so guys can come hit on her? It's not distrust. It's not insecurity. It's just a foolish move.
But it's only foolish if you think she actually might cave. Unless you're worried about her getting assaulted.
No. Why would you put her in that circumstance? Why wouldn't you protect her from that circumstance? Doesn't she want to know that you're territorial over her and you would want to protect that at all rights? Don't women deeply, deeply want you to feel for them in that way?
No. So
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
I'm glad we're here.
Well, we have to tease things apart because there are averages. And so, yes, I think a lot of women do, but I think if they're in that phase, there isn't the maturity to the relationship that I think is the great joy. So this is how I came into my marriage. So I was very bad with women when I was young. And I would, not figuratively, I would literally show up with flowers and a poem custom written for that girl on the first date. There was one girl I wrote a very clever poem, if I do say so myself, just to get the first date, which P.S. I did not get. And so...
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah. Oh, this is all terrible. I want everyone to understand did not work. So long story short, I finally cracked the code and I figure out what you have to do. And then suddenly getting women was very easy. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. This is a game. There's psychological principles at play. If you understand the psychological principles, then you can position things well and you can present yourself in a certain way and what we would call hold the frame. And so once I learned how to do that, very, very easy. And then what I learned though was, okay, what I resonate with is I want to share my life with somebody. And there's a great story about U2, the band. U2 started out as a punk rock band and evolved over the years. But their whole thing was, we're going to find out what it looks like when a band stays together for their entire career. And so Bono could have broken off and done his own thing. Maybe The Edge could have gone off and done his own thing. But they said, nope, that's not the game we're playing. The game we're playing is, what does it look like when a band stays together for 30 years? And so we all got to watch that play out. And so when I proposed to Lisa, my now wife, I was like, I want to share this life with you. And I want to grow with you, build things with you. Like I want to do all of this with you. And on our first anniversary, I gave her a 50th anniversary card. And I said, I'm going to earn this. And one day this will be true. And our whole life has been predicated around that and being honest. And I said, look, I'm always going to want to sleep with other women. Don't be paranoid about it because I'm committed to you. And so I won't sleep with other women. But I don't ever want you to feel insecure because I'm saying dumb shit like, oh, I only have eyes for you, because you're going to know better than that. And I don't need you to pretend that you don't find other people attractive. What I need to know is that despite the fact that you find other people attractive, despite the fact that there will be times where I'm up and times where I'm down, I need to know when I'm down that you have so much belief in me that you would never cheat, that would be disloyal. And speaking of creeds, that you would just never violate the promise that we're making to each other. And so
But you do know that that's bullshit, right?
No, it is 100%
bullshit,
accurate.
though. Let me tell you why it's bullshit.
Please.
The only reason it's bullshit is because you actually achieved everything you set out to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
You could have made that creed all day long, but if you would not have become TomBilyeu,
Yep.
and you would have been in a position or put her in a position where she didn't respect you anymore, she would have cheated on your ass, and that creed would have been out the window. You were a winner, and for that reason she stayed. Because I don't want to mix the truth to young men about what it is. It's not your love story or your poem. It's the fact that you became who you are as a man.
Let me ask you, how many years do you think I made her poor before I made her even sort of middle class wealthy?
she agreed. She believed in you the whole time.
Yes,
Because
for sure.
women
But that's
bet,
very
women
different.
bet on horses.
Yes. We
and
don't have any disagreement.
And she saw
Uh-huh.
in you what was always inevitable to become true, and that you would win.
Okay. But then it isn't about me ultimately accomplishing it. It's about her believing in me,
The
which I
whole
agree
time.
with.
And you should always
Perfect.
be taking her on that ride. It's your job.
Yes, but understand. So this all started with, would I let her go on the girls' trip, and do I think that it's
Right.
foolish? So we have created this pact, marriage. I mean, for us, it was very traditional. So we had vows, and we took those vows seriously, and we talked a lot about what they meant. And we don't even make jokes about divorce. We call it the D word. I don't tease her like, oh, do
I like
that,
that.
and I'm going to
I
leave
like-
you.
I like
We don't
that.
fuck around with that.
Yeah, you don't put it in consciousness. I
No
love
way.
that. Yep.
So we do all kinds of things like that to protect it, talk about how we want to share our life, build our life together. We do things like, hey, we're founding this company and it's going to be 50-50. And I care not about, like, I've said things like, because I really believe it. Hey, if I ever found out you were cheating on me, it's fine. You have earned your half. I will give you my half. I'll never speak to you again, but take your half and go. I'm not going to fight you.
So you put that in reality and not the D word?
Yeah, because what I want her to understand is, this is when I'm talking about that, I need her to understand I wouldn't be who I am if you hadn't helped me become this person. And I recognize your contributions. There was a moment, your fans are going to hate this. I'm not a crier. There are times where I'm like, I actually would feel better if I could cry, but I just can't cry. And there was one time I was fucking ugly crying, because this was before the internet came along, and I was just starting to be really successful. And I think it was tied to when I got put on a magazine cover. And I was like, the world is never going to know that I wouldn't be who I am without you. And that I literally don't know who I would be if I hadn't met her. I met her when I was 24. And so I was 24, I was broke, I was stupid, I had big ambitions, and she believed in me. She looked at the horse and she saw something. But at the time, I was not going anywhere useful. And so it really was her having the belief, like you said, but me knowing that she had gone for a long time helping turn me into something, and I became that thing, and she was never going to get recognized for it. And that was really heartbreaking. Now she's ended up getting her fair share of credit and stepping out in front of the camera.
You think that was really important to her?
No.
Yeah, exactly.
I just wanted her to be recognized
exactly,
for
though.
what she'd done.
You were working really hard. She was supporting you. I honestly, genuinely think that your relationship, from what I can tell with your wife, is beautiful. I just simply disagree with how you got there.
Okay, so give me, how do you think we got there?
Like, you were sitting there crying because you believed that she wanted some kind of credit for all this work that you had done while she had supported you.
No, I was crying because I was so grateful, and I didn't think she would ever get the credit. Not that she wanted it.
But if she didn't want the credit, don't you think she was fulfilled already in what she had done in supporting you?
Yeah, and that was probably part of why it was so... actually, no, mixed in that was, by then I knew that she was very unhappy being a stay-at-home wife.
Really?
Yeah.
And she didn't want to have children.
She did in the beginning and did not around that time, yeah.
What do you think drove that?
I think it's complex. So I want people to hear me. I am walking a dangerous path that I do not recommend to people. And I think the default path should be children. I think the default path should be marriage and children, but you have to figure out how to manage relationships. Very difficult, especially if you have kids. So I thanked you. I thank people very sincerely for having children, and I'm very grateful. And I think it is what most people should do for a whole host of reasons. So when she said she didn't want to have kids, I was like, you need to really think about this, because I will get my meaning and purpose from building businesses. And while I think it's a higher risk path, I love it. And so far have not found myself saying, I want kids enough that I want to have them now. So what I've always said about kids is I really want kids, and I do. The only thing I want more than I want to have kids is to not have kids. Now, I've big brothered, and I know it's not the same. It's a very small fraction, but I've big brothered enough to know what it's like to have somebody look up to you, to have somebody who's like, you're shaping me into an adult. It is a deeply meaningful relationship, even at that level. So I can only imagine when it's your own progeny. So I'm, as somebody who doesn't have kids, I'm about as aware as you're going to get the power of having children. But I always just didn't want them a little bit more than I wanted them. And so I was honest with myself and I said, you're going to regret this decision when you're 80. Once I'm done being a player and a coach, I will regret that I don't have kids. I will regret that they don't live beyond me. And I know that when I'm on my deathbed, I'll be like, man, that really sucks. Now I can give a whole masterclass on it's all about controlling your own frame. It's not controlling a frame isn't just about other people. It's how do I think about myself and my own choices? And so I know a part of me will be very sad. A part of me sad today that I don't have kids, but it's very easy for me to frame what I'm doing and the choices that I'm making in a way that make me feel very good about my
What
life.
stops you from reframing it for yourself if you know this is
To
there?
have kids?
Yeah.
I could.
Yeah, but why don't you?
Because I don't have anything that compels me to make that change. I don't think that my life would be better. I think it would be safer, but not better.
You don't think that your kids will add to your life?
I think they would, but they will also take something away. There's no
Which would be
utopia.
what?
There are only trade-offs.
Okay, yeah, but
Choices would be one, freedom, how I spend my time. I know that I would have a very deep sense of obligation to my kids, which is beautiful. I love that about me. I love that about me. The same way that I feel a deep sense of obligation to all the employees that count on me to make wise decisions so they can pay their rent and raise their kids. I love that about me. I love that I feel that
what
way.
would you say, and by the way, I do not agree with this.
Yeah.
But what do you say to the people that would say that that's selfish?
I don't mind at all. Sure.
Yeah.
I won't say that I don't care about what other people think, but I don't steer by what other people think. I think we are all the shout and the echo. So the shout is what you do and what you say, and the echo is what people think about it.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, I hear that coming back. And if it's brutal enough, I saw one of your posts, you said, I'd look at when people throw hate at me, I'd look at that to see if there's anything valid. So I'm the same. If something negative comes back, I'm
I
like,
think it's
ooh,
healthy.
is there, for
Is
sure.
there truth in it?
Yeah.
It's the
gonna make
people
you
that
better.
don't look at all.
They're
that-
insecure.
Yeah, they're
it.
insecure. Yeah. I like to
So-
look at it and really try to find truth, but yeah.
Because it will make you better. It will make you more effective. It will make you more powerful. So I do and believe that which moves me towards my goals. So I'm very honest that life is trade-offs. Now, I was far more worried about my wife not having kids
As you should
than
be.
myself.
That's where it, to me, surprisingly, she doesn't have that urge.
She has the urge. She feels similar to me in that she wants kids, but she wants to not have kids more. But I think being a woman, it's inevitable that that pull will be much harder for her. So we ran a bunch of thought experiments that will only dampen whatever regret she's going to have so much. And we just said, what's this going to look like when you're no longer interested in being an entrepreneur and you're tired and you don't have grandkids and you're looking around at your friends and they do have grandkids? How are you going to build meaning and purpose into your life? Because kids to me are two things. They are a sense of I live on, which I do not underestimate, and they are a sense of meaning and purpose. I have done something with my life that mattered. And if you have kids and you raise them well, you will feel that. And if you don't, you're misframing it, unless you were abusive or horrible or something.
Right.
So you get that, and nature has given you that. Nature has built that in. And so it's like, I really caution people against, nature has built this up. You've got a ready-made sense of meaning and purpose. And if you shun that, it's a very high-risk game. So anyway, we have walked into this with our eyes wide open. The thing that really scares me for my wife is if I die and she doesn't have kids. And that was always her terror. She was like, if something happens to you and I don't have kids. And I was like, you have to really think about that. And so, because my whole thing was, if you want kids, we'll have kids. But I'm not going to wake up in the middle of the night to take care of them. I'm building business. I'm slaying dragons, right?
Yep.
And that's why I see it.
And I don't.
I don't
wake up for the kids. No.
And so upon reflection,
I
she
believe
was
in
like,
gender roles completely also. I have no
I
problem.
believe in gender roles.
Yeah, gender roles. I have no problem with women in business at all. But when it comes to a household, I believe that the happiest people do have gender roles in place.
Dude, I want to say you're crazy, but I agree.
Yeah, I know. And it's not even, it's super unpopular to say, and it blows my mind that it's said that way. Women have, like, I would not take my children to a male babysitter. They're not wired to nurture and love those kids in the same way that a woman is.
I would say by default, the law of averages says that it will end up being a woman.
Yeah.
Everything in terms of nurturing, ability to care for, I'm sure there are guys out there that are amazing. It's just, it's going to be a small fucking number.
Right. Very small. And I feel like I'm loving my children every day when I'm working endlessly
Agreed.
to create a better life for them in the future. One of my biggest goals in life is to have something set up when I'm gone. I have this vision of a gentleman walking in a suit. All my children are sitting around a table, and he starts to unload what I set up for them. And my kids are just sitting there saying, he did what? And he put it in this, and it's a trust, and we don't pay that as a man, you know? And I'm not there anymore. And they knew I took care of them fully. And they knew that when I was gone and I was, you know, on the road, or when I was stressed out, or if I was sitting at the dinner table quiet, that I was fighting those battles for them, and I left it all to them, and that there's a legacy there. So I mostly get encouragement and motivation from envisioning who I'll be. It never comes from anger. It never comes from competing, really. And that particular moment is a moment that I'll never live to see, but I know for a fact it'll be real. And it inspires me to work for those little girls every day, and to, you know, make sure that I'm setting up their reality in a way that benefits because I was here, you know. And a guy like you not having a child is it's interesting to me because there's so much you would be able to give them, you know. And I know that you've given that to the world, but in other ways I can't imagine how you'd give to that kid, you know what I'm saying? And I mean that super respectfully.
No,
you would be a
appreciate it.
killer fucking dad.
Very kind.
Yeah.
I'm sure I will
Again,
do my
I'm
dad
not
arc on
being
the internet.
I'm not being nice to you.
No.
Like, I genuinely believe that. Like, the kid would end up being a guru. You know?
Maybe. I mean, that's a roll of the dice.
Well, guru, but
one
you
of
know
the
what I
things
mean.
that haunts me, and in fact, I want to ask you. So you're wealthy, you're very successful. Your kids are going to struggle to get out from under your shadow already. So what do you do to make sure that money doesn't break them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'm going to face that mostly as it comes to me. I do want to put my kids in a position to be affluent with the right people in their life, networking wise. They won't be able to get out of hard work. I suspect they will work for the family business. If they choose not to, I would like to see them marry off to somebody and go help that gentleman build. And I'm talking about my girls. People ask me all the time, was like, well, what are you going to do if your daughters marry a guy like you? I fucking hope so. I really do. Because he'll be strong enough to allow her to let go and be inside his frame because she believes in him and he's strong. Just much like your wife believed in you, in your strength. I would want that for my little girls, or they would work for me. I think one of their bigger issues is going to be finding a man that I don't absolutely beat in a landslide in every category. I think that's going to be their problem. And that's a problem I like them having. So in regards to not spoiling them too much, I don't think it's completely possible, but I do think that giving them a firm taste of reality and what the world actually looks like outside of their world, like making them visit the real estate properties, making them work in the business. Those are obvious things. And then slapping my own hand and creating the frame of myself to make sure I don't spoil them too badly, which will be hard.
I bet.
It's going to be super hard. I already bought Emery. I told you I bought that Huracan Evo. Well, I bought her one that she can get in, and I'll get to drive her around in it. So I'm already kind of spoiling her a little bit, but shit, she's got a bigger closet than I ever had growing up. You know, she's spoiled, and Eva is not quite old enough to be super spoiled yet, but
Give her time.
give her a little time. Yeah.
Do you have an ideal number of kids you want to have?
I don't, man. And also, just to clarify, I don't know that I'll ever have another wife. You know, I love my family. I really, really do.
Do you call her your wife?
I try not to. Let me tell you why I try not to say it on YouTube or anything like that, is because I don't believe in bringing the state into my business. And I feel like if I were to call her my wife a whole lot, it would just be used against me.
Interesting.
You know what I'm saying? But that's probably not true. Plus there's some, you know, we have some things in place, but yeah, she's my wife, man. I love that girl, bro. Completely.
There's
You know?
some part of you though that still is, I don't know what word you're going to accept. So feed me the word. I'm going to give you a starter
Sure.
word. but is tense, that whether it's I don't want to call her wife too much because it can be used against me. Like literally, Lisa, what would you like? I will write everything down that could be read in court. Whatever. And to me, that's the point. Like, I don't know why people stay in a relationship if they don't feel that way. Women are a sacrifice. My wife is a pain in my ass. And so I'm like, if you weren't the most amazing creature I've ever encountered in my life, I would never put up with just having to deal with what somebody else wants. Like everything is a compromise when you're in a relationship. And I'm sure she feels exactly the same way.
Well, maybe that's just people affecting my viewpoint on the subject. She's not a thorn in my side at all. And I don't have any major concern that I'm going to have legal issues with her. I will tell you a large part of my childhood revolved around that. We did 12 custody courts. My mom cheated twice. They were going to put us in a foster home. There's a lot of violence and things going on. My mom, she even made a YouTube channel when I first started.
Really?
Yeah, like trying to like talk shit, and she put
go about you?
Oh yeah. Ooh. She's sick, bro. Like, she's not a bad person. She's just sick, man. None of her family can talk to her. She just beat the shit out of us, like physically. She's a strong woman. A lot of my genetics actually come from my mother. She was built like an Amazon. Anyway, I say all that to say that I saw a lot of what happens to a man when he gets wrecked in a divorce. My dad got charged with everything from battering her, sexual molestation of us. They were sending us to child therapy, all these things. I don't feel like I have trauma from it. I feel like I'm a grown man that can look back at it and say, those things happened. What can I learn from it? What could my dad have done differently, maybe, that he didn't even have the information to know he could have done? Because back then, all you had was brimstone in the Bible, right? And that's what he had saw work with his dad. His dad came home from World War II, or I guess World War I. He was going to World War II. He built a house. He farmed a bunch of cotton in Oxford, Mississippi. He had one wife his whole life. She would bring tea and cook 3 meals a day. The structure worked. And I see that worked, and my dad tried it, and my mom would, go seeking other men, hypergamy, in church, mind you.
That's rough.
Yeah. And then he was taken through this ringer of false allegations, and he fought his ass off and fought his ass off and fought his ass off to keep us in his life. And I don't know if you saw it, but I just paid his house off.
Congratulations.
And, it was probably one of the biggest achievements of my life, man. And if anything, I just have a very realistic understanding of how the court system and everything is set up. But it doesn't change my feelings for that woman. She's changed her name. She's a big ass ring, big ass house, babies, nanny, the whole thing.
Do you live in the house with her?
And she likes blondes.
That does not hurt. That does not hurt.
When I'm there, I have 2 houses.
In Louisiana?
And so I have 2 houses that I keep open. The YouTube team comes and they stay in the old house, and then I stay in the big house with the nanny, the kids, and the wife, and a lot of times the mother-in-law's there, and I have people coming over and things like that. I've never said any of this online, actually. But I have the most fulfilling family life I could ever imagine or dream of. I get photos like this podcast. My little girls will watch this. This will be playing in the living room. There's no lies. Even I know my mother-in-law sees the things I say. But you know what? There's a lot of respect between all of us. There's a lot of spending time together and having real conversations that have depth to them. There's a lot of trust there. And I lead the family and the businesses with conviction. And I love all my people, and I love my family, and they know that. And I can be an asshole if I need to, but most often I never even need to. And I really, really have a fulfilled life in that particular area, man. My family life is much better than anything you'll ever see online. And
why do you think people have a hard time believing that?
Because they're not seeing all of me, and a lot
because you don't want them to see all of you?
No, I think a lot of it is my fault. When I didn't expect to come in online. I met a group of guys. I'd always kind of wanted to. What man doesn't want to have a big podcast, especially like nowadays, right? But I wouldn't let myself because I wasn't a liquid millionaire yet. So on my whole 20s, I would watch all this stuff. I've watched you for years. I knew who you were. When Thomas sent me the message, like, yo, Impact Theory called, I'm like, bullshit. I was super excited, man. And I'm honored to be here. But I knew I'd wanted to, but I wasn't in that place in my life where I felt like I had completed all the boxes I had set out to check.
I know the feeling very well.
Yeah. And so I didn't. And also learned from that the goals that I made in my 20s, I was not yet qualified to make for my 30s. So when I got to 30 and I wasn't where I wanted to be, I felt like I'd have failed. But what I had forgotten is that the goal that I had set, I wasn't qualified to make at 24, right? And I met Sterling Cooper and I met Andrew and Tristan, and I was thinking about joining, and I even had started a channel. And right about the time I did is when Andrew texted me. He's like, yo, we were in Miami, and he said, come eat dinner with me. So I did. And he's like, dude, I really believe in you. I know you don't have any followers, but I believe that you will, because you have everything it takes and you built a real business in the real world. You'll garner a lot of respect from people online.
For sure.
You're building steel buildings all over America. Like, you're building a country. It's a real business. Why don't you see what I've done? You feel how you feel about the war room, and I love the war room. Why don't you just help me so we can help as many people as possible? Handshake, done. And I never look back. I'll never start a group. I'll never, go out and try to make a war room or anything like that. But that's how it got started. And then it just grew and grew and grew to where it is now. And I get a lot of support from her in that area. And I get a lot of support from my family and the people that run my businesses and everything. So it was one of the best decisions I've ever made, I think, honestly. It's very fulfilling,
I love that. I love the loyalty. I love doing things with friends. I love understanding, hey, I can be bigger as a part of this and win a championship than if I tried to do it on my own.
And I didn't answer you, though. The reason I had not shown it is because I thought that I would want to protect it in some way. But what I came to grow to learn in this time is that people are not seeing the side of me that laughs all the time. They're not seeing the side of me that love people. They're only seeing this rigid side where I'm arguing with some girl that has an OnlyFans account. And that could not be further from who I actually am in real life. And one thing I did learn from Andrew is that I won't make the mistake of not showing that other side of me. Now, I'm not saying he's wrong, but I am saying that there's this other great side of myself and him, and that others should see so they understand the full, wholeness of who we are as people. Because I honestly think I'm a really, really, really good dad. In fact, I know I am. And I expect that I'm going to show that more, because just showing a little bit is more of a lie from omission than it is giving the real truth. So
yeah, I mean, I get the strategy of building a persona and then sticking to it. But one, I think the people that build a persona, they end up helping people less than they think, because that person is going to test their persona against the real world and finds that it comes up wanting. And when you are your whole self, it's harder to package. I know from experience. But at the same time, you'll feel good about it. You'll have a lot more staying power. Because people know who you are, and as you evolve, you can evolve things. So you don't have to suddenly play a new character. It's just you're really evolving in real time, and that's that. I think that will play out a lot better. Speaking of the holistic version of you, what makes you good at business?
It's my leadership. Like, in the beginning, I was really big-hearted, right? And I wanted to spend time with the guys, and I wanted to help them set up, like, insurance things where they could get wealthy from it. And
but how did you even get your business started? Like, you're a 0 to 1 story. Those are the most brutal. You do not come from money.
Yep.
You don't come from an obvious town that would end up sparking a very successful entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Certainly not. I mean, I would not even know where to start if I had to make a business out of putting up steel buildings. So how do you take that from idea to actually having a multi-million-dollar business?
So I guess I can give you a life path of it. I first had to get a job somehow. It's 2009. I've told this story many times, but basically I went to the same place so many times the boss finally saw me. And instead of getting mad at me, he liked me for interrupting his office so much.
Saying, give me a job.
Yep. And so he gave me a job, and I saved the money up to apply for my contractor's license test. My stepfather had done metal buildings in backyards. And he also had worked for this company, and we had a house fire. We actually had 2 house fires because somebody in our house knew how insurance worked. We spoke about her. And I remember going to this guy's house and being like, this dude puts up metal bills. He had a basketball court in his house, you know, and he wasn't like balling like this house, but like you could tell, like you go from like a shitty neighborhood to his neighborhood. There was a dissonance between the two, right? And I'm in like 7th grade at this point. I'm like, cool. And then in my town in Baton Rouge, you ever seen the movie October Skies?
No, but I've heard you talk about it.
Yeah. So my October Skies, instead of going to the coal mill, I didn't want to work in the plants. And so I'm looking at my situation. I'm like, well, I'm not doing that good in school. I was smart. You know, I could make good grades, but I was super uninterested. And I was like, okay, what do I need to do to get out of here? Well, sports. So I played football, baseball, and basketball all the way to my junior year. And I said, the only full ride here is football.
At this time, so I've heard you talk about football's very transactional. You end up getting your scholarship. But are you already like, okay, I'm going to get rich. Here's my life path. I'm going to start a business.
That's what I was leading to, actually. We were going to play Arkansas. I don't know if you follow college football at all, but they were good at the time. There was a guy named Derek McFadden, blah, blah, blah. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I told my roommate that night, a guy named Zeke Zachary, I said, man, I'm going to own a business one day. And he goes, all right, yeah, cool. Funny enough, he texted me just last week. I've not talked to him in like 15 years.
That's
and he's
hilarious.
like, I see you online all the time, bro. You did it. But I finished college. There's no jobs. I beat on that guy's door until he finally gives me a job. I went to the bank, got him to auto draft all the money out of the account so I could live poor, save the money up.
Okay, so whoa. Brilliant decision.
Yep.
So this is like the breaking point where, first of all, most people don't think of the idea. They don't allow themselves to believe they can do it. You do. That's important step number 1. Important step number 2, and I've heard you talk about this, and you always rush past it, and I don't know why. So the willingness to be poor. This is why I'm always trying to convince people, like in the beginning, do not try to optimize for money. Try to optimize for the knowledge, in this case, getting the loan so that you can do your thing, but optimize for that thing that's going to let you set up the business. And so you lived super poor.
Very much.
You auto drafted how much out of your account?
It was like 80-90% of my check. So the job ended up being actually in New Orleans with the company I went with. I actually ended up getting offered 2 jobs in 1
and you were
week.
just like, what is the least I can live on?
Yeah. So I had like a $750 a month rent. And I was making $75 a day in per diem. So I would mostly live off per diem. It was this little hole in the wall Magazine Street in New Orleans. And so I got to experience the city a bit, but then I'd drive out to this big levee job. And I was able to auto draft that money to get the $10,000 in the bank account. I took that bank statement to the contractors licensing board in Baton Rouge. Then I moved the money and then went and applied for my residential at the same time. I'm not sure if I had to, but I didn't want to risk it. And
how did you figure out all the things you had to do to start the company?
I drove to the contractors licensing board and went in person and just asked the lady behind the desk.
Dude, that's so...
There's a sweet little black lady, bro. She helped me through the whole thing.
Dude, people will always help. Like, it's crazy. People just never ask.
They don't ask, man. Like out of a whole year, I might have been the only person that walked in and asked. You know? And I think that you super have that power when you're a young man. You know, like if you're starting a business and you start asking people for help, bro, I had some kids come to my house in Louisiana the other day to pressure wash. And I was just so impressed that they were beating on doors in a country club that I'm like, whatever the price is, do it. You know, it's hard not to pull for ambition, you know, especially being American. Like I feel like this whole country was built on that. And so that's what I did. And I started doing buildings in backyards. It was really hard in the beginning. You know, because a lot of the guys that I was trying to be the project manager, the guy begging for money at the bank, the bookkeeper, you know, the guy that showed up when somebody got too drunk. So
so you quickly realize if I'm going to scale this, I have to scale my team.
Yes.
This is where leadership kicks in.
I ended up running into E-Myth.
I had him on the show.
Yeah. Gerber. Nice. I ended up running into E-Myth, and so I started to build systems, and I started to get in a position where I looked big on paper. And so instead of doing backyard buildings, I started sending quotes for doing much, much larger buildings to general
What
contractors.
made you look big on paper, and was that strategic?
Yeah, so it was strategic because it was really just me and my pickup truck and like 4 or 5 guys who were
So you're like,
definitely,
okay, on paper, I can make myself look different than this.
I can look better on paper. And
And was that letterhead and
it was
references?
letterhead. I got my hands on somebody else's bid template, which is like 5-6 pages. Will not do this. You must clean the anchor bolts. I will have 100 foot of circumference around the slab. Like, it just looked really good, right? Their license number was on the bottom, so I just on my MacBook in a Starbucks, right? And then oh shit, job time. So go run to the job. Drive there, truck, tools. But I knew that doing that and having insurance, and I paid somebody to do a website really early, I reinvested in the business a lot. The problem I would run into is the actual manpower itself. And that's when it got, really, really hard because, you'd have multiple buildings going on at the same time. We'd go to bigger buildings, and these GCs don't play. Like, you're swimming with sharks in construction because they have a schedule. You better hit it, and you better be safe. And your men better not make a mistake, and your men don't even want to be there a lot of the time. So it's that, and there's no punches pulled. It's a very legal game. They will hit you with liquidated damages very quickly, which is basically $3,000 a day you miss the schedule.
Oof.
Especially on school projects and things like that. And then you go to put the roof on. Sorry, the kids are testing. You have to come back tomorrow. But what about my equipment that's sitting here on rent? Like, there's all these things, right? The business is difficult. I'll never forget, my first line of credit was $15,000 so I could make my $2,500 payrolls. But I eventually got in a position where I'd had enough momentum. I'd hired and fired enough people that enough people had stuck. And at that point, I was very rigid because I'd just been lied to so much. And it finally, after the systems were there and I hired the right people, and I had some bonus structures in place. And that lady I told you about, Renee, her name's Renee. Love you, Renee. She came in, and it was almost like that exercise you see on YouTube of the 2 people dancing in the field. And they see the 2 people dancing in the field, and then all of a sudden it's 5 people, then it's 10 people, and then it's 20 people. That woman believing in me and getting behind me and helping me. And we set up some really good systems around recruiting. I had already built them, but she helped me get them implemented. From there, about 5 or 6 years ago, got us to the point where it was just a moonshot. We were just able to duplicate it, project process, pre-construction, contract checklist, retainage, how we pay people, like everything. It's like somebody finally got behind the systems I had built when I had eMyth. And I knew that I could actually trust some people. And for that guard that I had up around, you can't trust anybody. And with good reason. I was getting lied to left and right. I was buying my own tools out the pawn shop.
Oof.
Like, it was fucked. We finally created a culture where now my men will kick other guys off the job if they're not working. And I mean, there's many things that happened. I had a guy, I didn't know this, but he had given me some paperwork that was wrong, and he wasn't supposed to be here, and he got picked up by ICE.
Oof.
Yep. And I paid $25,000 to keep him here, and I'm obligated to him with the government.
Wow.
But you don't think that gets around?
I was going to say.
You don't think there's going to be loyalty there? So it's one of those things where I had to take some punches, and when we came out on the other side, I was able to trust people in a way that I knew that I could actually let them do their job, and then we could talk about, and of course we have daily reports and everything, and we're constantly plotting and planning. But then Andrew and Tristan brought that out of me even more, like, because that's what you originally asked me. And I just think it's because.
How many years ago was this?
What?
That you started working with them?
Oh, it's been like 3 years. Yeah.
So are you saying that your business took a big turn when you met them?
No, I was already making a bunch of money. My life was great.
So what were the key things that you started piecing together? So I teach an entrepreneurship class.
Yeah.
And I find it is very difficult to actually teach people what they need to do, because the real thing, I'll be interested to see if you agree with this. Here's what a I know you cringe at CEO, but here's what a CEO has to do.
I hate it.
You have to be good at solving novel problems. A problem not only have you not seen before, nobody's seen before. And you have to be able to go in and figure it out, whether it's ice or it's the sheet metal isn't connecting the way it's supposed to, or you've got everything on rent and the school is pushing back, whatever. You have to be able to figure out all those problems when there's nobody else to ask. And so how do you teach somebody to be good at that? So I'm very curious, what were some of those key moments? So you learned, okay, I've got to be able to trust my employees. You read E-Myth and you realize I've got to have a system. I can't work in my business. I have to work on it. You start building out charts and data.
All the checklists.
How did you figure out what data to look at?
Yeah, so I gotten a bunch of mentors. I joined the Metal Building Contractors Directors Association. I was a board member at a very early age. I'm pretty sure I was the youngest board member ever. And I got a lot of that information from them. And then everything else was really just a mistake we had made that it might as well go on this checklist now because I don't ever want to pay for it again. And that's generally how I am. It's like if a guy makes a mistake and I know there's intent there, and intent is very important to me, then I'm okay with it. It's the guy that skips it on the checklist that's going to get fired, right? And as far as being a CEO, I believe the number one driving factor for a CEO to be successful, in my opinion, is to be a playmaker. Because you're right. He's working on the business and there's new problems that are attacking the business that have become a threat to a business. And he's got to be able to, on the hip, while the plane is in the air, put the duct tape on the wing and figure out a way to get to a different level, a new altitude. And I was very, very good at that. And maybe it's because I'm a bit ADD and I like to hyper focus, and I'm very good in chaos. You know, I'm not very good at being organized, but if you create a storm, I'm really good in that. And so for me, it just made sense. It never even felt like I was reading. There's no book I read to do that. And I think people either have that or they don't. I constantly tell Renee, I'm like, man, if we could just figure out a way to figure out if somebody can think for themselves or not, we will have the biggest steel company in the history of construction. But it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard to do. And I think I had that particular gift naturally. And I had the other gift of bringing people together and creating trust and having bonds with them. But I wasn't able to release that part until, you know, I had some people that were willing to dance to the same rhythm and row the boat in the same direction. And that caught on. And it caught on like wildfire in a lot of ways. And then running into Andrew and Tristan, I saw what it was like to truly trust a brother. Something I had never really had. I grew up in a house full of there was 5 kids, but we had different dads. There was like 7 or 8 years apart. They're pretty overweight. Like, well, there's not a lot in common. So I always felt like I was really just a black sheep in my own family. And seeing them have that relationship has been very, very beneficial to me, because I've noticed the more trust that I put into people, especially people that I know deserve it, the more they don't want to let me down. And I think that's abundantly valuable in business, and it creates a lot of speed. So when we trust each other, we can go fast, because I'm not worried about anybody snaking me or stealing business or anything like that. And they have that. Any one of them could steal all the money from the other one at any time. And I have some employees that could wreck me if they wanted to, but they won't. And I think a lot of that is that trust that's already there that they would never want to sabotage. And so that's kind of how we got there in a nutshell. It's a very short-winded version, but that also circles back into the trust question you had.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's been an interesting theme that's cropped up. Where can people follow you?
You can go to my website to get free emails every day at justinwinwaller.com.
I love it.
Awesome.
All right, everybody. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And until next time, my friends, be legendary. Take care. Peace. If you're single, you are not going to want to miss this episode with Chris Williamson.
But it's more than 50% of people are starting their relationships online at the moment, and they don't stick about as long. Relationships that start online are not as, they don't have the longevity, they don't have the staying power.